Okay, we'll get started momentarily as soon as we get one more council member. Okay, it is 7:04. I'm calling this meeting of the San Leandro City Council to order. And will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able to. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please take roll?
Council Member Bolt.
Present.
Sorry, Councilmember Bolt.
Present.
Thank you. Council Member Simon.
Present.
Thank you. Council Member Viveros Walton.
Present. Present.
Thank you. Council Member Aguilar.
Present.
Present. Thank you. Council Member Bowen. There you go. Present. Thank you. And Mayor Gonzalez.
Present. So before we get to date, I'd like to acknowledge the Lunar New Year is being celebrated by many in our community at this time. It marks the beginning of the lunar calendar and is observed across numerous cultures present here in San Leandro and in countries like China, Vietnam, Korea, and others. And we extend our best wishes to all that are celebrating, and we recognize the cultural significance of this holiday to many of our residents. So may you have a healthy and prosperous new year. Tonight we have the appointment and swearing in of two new members under Agenda 10A, Shailani Alex to the Arts, Culture, and Library Commission, and Victor Crevoceza to the Community Police Review Board. I'd like to move these items up to Section 4, recognitions, in the interest of time, if there are no objections. Looking down council roll, don't see any objections, so it will be adjusted accordingly in our agenda. The City of San Leandro conducts orderly meetings to fulfill its mandate. Discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964 and or the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, California Penal Code Sections 403 or 415 are per se disruptive to meeting and will not be tolerated. Please see the City Council Handbook and City Council Meeting Rules of Decorum for more information. Madam Clerk, your announcement.
If you would like to make a public comment during the meeting, you can do so in person or via Zoom. If you are present at the meeting, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk before the item is presented. If you wish to participate in public comment via Zoom, you can use the Raise Your Hand tool when the item is called. During the public comment session, speakers will be invited to speak and will have a set time to share their comments. A countdown timer will appear for their convenience, and when the time is up, the microphone will be muted. All raised hands outside of public comment will be lowered to avoid confusion. Once public comment is open, hands may be raised to speak. There will be a 30-minute window for public comments, which will take place under Item 7, Public Comments, as per the published agenda. After this time is up, the council will proceed with the rest of the meeting's agenda. If you have not had the opportunity to speak during the initial 30-minute period, there will be another chance to do so after Item 12, City Council Reports.
At this point in time, we will check Item 3. Was there anything to report out of closed session?
No reportable action, Mr. Mayor.
But direction was given to staff. So So at this point in time, we'll move to item number 4. We don't have any recognitions, but this is where we will take our item 10A, motion to appoint representatives to boards and commissions. Acting City Clerk, this is your item.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, tonight before you, we do have the motion to appoint Shailani Alex to the Arts, Culture, and Library Commission, and also Victor Krevacheza to fill a vacancy on the Community Police Review Board.
Okay, at this point in time, I will take a motion. Vice Mayor.
So moved.
And I'll second the item. This nomination occurred before, and this is just a final action to appoint in the form of minute order, so we can move straight to a vote. Please vote.
All votes are in, and the motion carries unanimously.
At this point in time, would you please, Madam Clerk, conduct our swearing in?
Shailani, if you'd join me. So you can just face me and raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, official.
Thank you for your service. We appreciate you stepping forward. At this point in time, we go to consent calendar. Are there any council members that would like to pull an item from our consent calendar? Seeing none, we will take a public comment on the consent calendar at this time.
Mayor, we have not received any public comment cards on this item, but we do have one hand raised online.
Please proceed online.
The first online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I'm going to try to wind my way back over to the agenda here in my, here we are. So I wanted to comment on two of the items, and that would be the contract for city branding, and that looks like it's 5B, and then also the purchase of 5 vehicles for the police department, and that's item 5D. I just, I want to raise the general question about the problem of our city having, structural debt. We're not doing well on the balance sheet. The branding contract looks like it's $150,000. I'm not a marketing person. I suppose that money would get back to us at some point, but I just, it just sort of makes me wonder, really? $150,000 to pump up our brand? And then for item 5D, are we just buying new police cars because that's what we always do? Like, what happened to the old police cars? Do we wreck them? Are they not workable anymore? I know there are a lot of miles go on, a lot of time, a lot of wear and tear. I know they are well maintained. Our police department can't do without the vehicles, but like, can't we stretch our vehicle budget a little farther? It seems like every year we're buying multiple vehicles for a lot of money. And then the other thing is, I would want to make sure that these are electric vehicles or at least hybrid vehicles. If we're going to do right by the planet. So that one's $450,000. Together, 600,000 is the better part of $1 million. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mike Katz-Lakabe.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and staff. It's time for the City of San Leandro and its elected leaders to stop using the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. When advertisers decided to stop using the social media platform because their ads were showing up next to pro-Nazi content and hate speech, the owner sued the advertisers. In November 2024, you could be forgiven for not noticing the change that anything you posted on the platform would be used to train his own artificial intelligence platform, which, by the way, went on to be the preferred method for producing non-consensual sexualized images of women and children. And perhaps you didn't care that the social media platform's owner spent nearly $300 million to get the current administration elected. On Inauguration Day, 2 Nazi salutes by the social media platform owner should have caught your attention. And when he joined the current administration as the leader of DOGE, perhaps you didn't feel the impact of the careless and haphazard approach to gutting the people and finances of critical government services. Now the owner of the platform, formerly known as Twitter, is spreading conspiracy theories, including the white supremacist great replacement theory that has led to the demonization of immigrants. So why are the City of San Leandro and the San Leandro Police and some of our elected leaders still using this platform? Why are the mayor and some members of the council still using it? Continued use of the platform says a lot, and it's not good. It's long past time to act in a way that reflects the values that you've all previously put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, there are no more hands raised online.
Okay, so we'll close public comment, both online and in person. Coming back to Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the consent.
So a motion by Councilmember Aguilar to adopt the consent calendar. Do I have a second? I will second the consent calendar. So with that, any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes are in, and the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, next we'll move to our city manager announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members and community members. It is my pleasure to announce that this week, the police department welcomed 2 new police officers. First, we have Officer Javier Almos and Aaron Gonzalez. Officer Almos attended the 26-week Contra Costa County Basic Police Academy and graduated this past Friday, February 13th. Officer Gonzalez previously served as a police services technician with the department, and they will now begin their 18-week field training program. So please join me in welcoming them to the San Leandro Police Department. That concludes my announcements.
Thank you for that good news. We'll now move to public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on our agenda. So if it's on the agenda, please wait until that item is called. So for items that are not on our agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council, now is the opportunity to address City Council. Madam Clerk.
Mayor, we've received 8 cards here in the room, and we currently have 1 hand raised online.
Okay, online people, this is the time to raise your hand because we're going to start online and then we'll come in person. So I'll give you 10 seconds. And you sure you have all your cards here? You said you have 8, right? Perfect. So we are going to be taking the 8 cards after we take the hands online. How many hands do we have online?
Mayor, we have 2 hands raised online.
Okay, so those are the 2 people that we will be recognizing. And what are those names, please?
Douglas Spalding and Mimi Dean.
Okay, Douglas and Mimi, we will take you first. We will then close public comment online and we'll bring it into the room.
The first online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Darn it, I was banking on you going the other way so I'd have a few minutes to collect my thoughts, but I can probably say what I wanted to say. First, I want to give a shout out to two kind gestures in our city. I hope others also made it over to As Needed Bakery for their grand opening last weekend. And I really love the feature where you can buy, pay it forward, buy a cup of coffee for somebody else and put it up on the board, which I did because I know I will once more walk into the library without my wallet and want a cup of coffee. So I kind of paid for myself. The other one is, I don't know how many people know about this wonderful program that Human Services has brought to our city. I signed up at the San Leandro Senior Center, and it's a ride share. It's an organization, I think it's called City Share, that's located in Pleasanton, but they've contracted with our city. And the benefit for me was I was able to get somebody to drive me to my surgery a couple Mondays ago, and save my mom the trouble of coming all the way from Walnut Creek and having to worry about whether she can really still drive or not. So I encourage people to sign up. And also, I'm going to sign up and volunteer to drive somebody else. All right, moving on. I wanted to again thank the City Council profoundly for your vote on the rent stabilization ordinance. And I would like to know, when I know the rent registry is being worked on to make it feasible. I'd like to kind of know when that comes into play. And I want to know what the city plans are for advertising this new RSO. Because in our continuing outreach through the housing platform of the Big Tent, we're finding that a lot of people don't know about it. They don't know the details. A lot of people just got rent increases, some like upwards 10% that don't really go with what the old.
Thank you so much. Your time has elapsed. Our next online speaker is Mimi Dean.
Hi, it's Mimi Dean. I just logged on because I just got out of my other meeting. Is now the time for me to comment about the issues with my colleague Fred?
We're on non-agenda items.
So I don't know if it's on the agenda. So somebody could cut me off now. I won't waste your time.
Hold on just a second, please. Okay, so this would be your time. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to say that, Fred Simon and I have been working at Oraloma for about a year now. And I have found him to always be a kind and thoughtful and wonderful person. And, I just am very sad that this whole thing that's going on was done in a open public session rather than in a closed session, because that's really where it belonged. I am hoping that there has been some kind of verification of all the people in that report, because, I know Mayor Emeritus Sheila Young disputes what was written that she said. And if the Mayor Emeritus disputes it, it makes me feel like other people maybe were also misquoted, or something wasn't, sources were not verified. So I really think it's important to always check your sources. That's what a good reporter does. And so that's what I want to say about that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the voting process that you guys use. I think it's really weird that Fred and Victor are not allowed to get to vote on their own discipline, but Suha is allowed to vote. Now, if this was a court of law, neither the defendant nor the plaintiff would have any say. The jury is the one who decides, the other people. So I just think it's really weird. And I just think, we need transparency and we need fairness. And it just doesn't seem right that one person gets to vote and then the other person doesn't get to vote also. So either everybody should vote or else the people that are involved in the case shouldn't vote. That's just my 2 cents, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Mayor, that concludes our online public comment.
Please proceed in person now.
The first three speakers in the room are Bernard Ashcraft, David Anderson, and Nancy Rafalaf. Bernard Ashcraft, David Anderson, and Nancy Rafalaf.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Attorney, City Manager. I'm here on behalf of the Bay Area Business Roundtable and the Big Tent Organization. We sent you a request to, at the next council meeting, to issue a resolution of apology for redlining. The effects of redlining continue to reverberate throughout our community today in the form of persistent wealth gaps, education disparities, and residential segregation patterns. An official acknowledgement and apology would represent an important step forward. Recognizing the pain and the economic harm inflicted on families excluded from our city was pure economic violence. Educating current and future residents about this history, beginning a process of reconciliation and healing, demonstrating San Leandro's commitment to equity and justice. I urge the City Council to issue a formal resolution apologizing for San Leandro's participation in redlining and its discriminatory housing practices, and to consider what other additional steps the city might take to address the ongoing legacy of these policies. It's important that we move forward and keep in mind that it's always a good time to do the right thing. Now's the time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are David Anderson, Nancy Rafalaf, and Karen Silva.
Good evening, Council. I'd like to speak on, in support of the redlining resolution. I think we should do something to show that we did not support that. When I moved up here in San Leandro, I was affected by that. It cost me $100,000 extra to get over that. But I think Mr. Ashcraft said pretty much all that needs to be said, and it's up to you guys to pick it up and take it from there. And also like to say, as far as Fred and Victor, that as the speaker called earlier, I think this is something that could have been handled in-house. It didn't have to come out in the open. And I hope that in the future that we would all respect one another and do these things behind the scenes. And all of this, it's just a big mess right now. It makes the city look terrible. So I don't want to get too deep in it because I get emotional about it. I think it was unfair the way it happened, and it shouldn't happen that way. And I think all you guys need to sit back and think about it and see if there's another way that you can do this. I know you have another meeting coming up on the actions that you're going to be taking, and I think that you would do a lot of soul searching and consider, what you're doing and how you're making the city look. Because it can happen to you guys just as well as it can happen to you and Victor. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Nancy Rafalaf, Karen Silva, and Carol Haberkos.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here tonight as a character witness for Fred Simon. Fred is a hardworking community leader. He's a family man, a son, a husband, and a father that always shows up for his family. Fred is a humble leader in his community who tirelessly does everything he can do to improve the lives of his community. Moving forward, I hope this council can find common ground and work for the best for San Leandro. That's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Karen Silva, Carol Habercross, and Rob Rich.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm here on behalf of Fred Simon, who I'm on the board for Washington Manor Homeowners Association, and I'm just basically here to give my concern and respect to Fred for being a wonderful leader for our community as well as District 4, and to just be here as an advocate for him. He's an advocate for our community and a well-known public servant who is consistently listens and is always there for every resident throughout San Leandro as well as Washington Manor. I'm really appalled at the way the city handled this situation, and to put Victor and to put Fred on the spot like this, and for this thing to keep going on year after year, month after month. It's an embarrassment. And it also takes up time and money that could have been spent better on our community and on our residents. So I hope that this kind of stuff will silence quickly, and it should have been handled behind closed doors. And it really should have been handled in a better way. So I just do want to give my respect to Fred and let you know that he is a wonderful community leader and a wonderful resident, as well as very supportive to every person throughout the community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Carol Habercross, Rob Rich, and Michael McGuire.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, and staff. I'm here also, I'm a resident of the city. I'm very proud of the work the city and community is doing. San Leandro is a city where kindness matters. The Stephen Taylor Memorial, the library's exhibitions, the passing of rent stabilization are just some of the few things that we've done here, San Leandro's done here. All city council members need to be treated with respect. I have worked with and gone to events with both council members, Simon and Aguilar, going back to the Bernie days. Go Bernie! While I was with them, I never experienced or witnessed them disrespecting others. As I read through news articles, city reports, and documents to try to find the evidence, I'm concerned. It's confusing. The report writer billed city council taxpayers $134,000 for their work. Melissa Wong, a San Leandro resident, documented 3 pages of analysis to tell the council of the worst errors identified in the report. So we are better than this. We need to move forward together, focus on the future, and keep fighting for democracy in our city's future. I do understand there's a video and transcript of Councilmember Simon's interview with the investigator, which will be on the city website soon, and I look forward to learning more about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Rob Rich, Michael McGuire, and Anthony Tejada.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Vice Mayor, members of the council, I realize this may be politically incorrect, but I like and respect each of you. That goes for you as well, Ms. City Manager, and I'm sure Mr. City Attorney, you're nice too, but we haven't met yet. To be honest, I was hoping that since it's been almost a month since the council voted to accept the findings of the independent investigative reports and agreed that there should be disciplinary action, that by now we would have begun the process of healing and moving on. Yet I keep hearing about errors made by the consultants in their reports finding gender bias. No doubt there are some errors. Constructive criticism is important. It can help drive improvement, but let's not miss the forest for the trees. You know what I see when I read those reports? I see something that looks a lot like me. I see a lot of my own subconscious sexism. And you know how I usually recognize my sexism? Friends, colleagues, and family point it out to me, and it doesn't always go well for them at first, but when I finally get it, I try to be accountable and improve. I've also heard restorative justice mentioned recently. I think that's great, so I'm here as an ally, and this is my restorative justice challenge. If a group of women tell you that you've engaged in a pattern of sexist behavior after you've found fault with them, next, try to find the truth in what they're saying, because it's in there, I promise. And then finish up by trying to be accountable and improve so that we can finally, please, move on.
Thank you. The next two speakers are Michael McGuire and Anthony Tejada.
Hi there. I agree with what was said earlier on redlining, and I think we should put that on the agenda before too much more time passes. And I just want to share two examples from recent history on apologies that waited too long. And one was our federal government waiting till 1998 to apologize to the Japanese Americans for their internment during World War II, 46 years later. And this is after it had literally become a textbook case of injustice for school kids in their textbooks. The other was in Australia, which gave the world the briefest demand in the recent history of protests. The Sorry movement wanted to get that country's federal government to utter that one word to the Aborigines, who had been mistreated in many ways, including their children being seized. A tent city had been set up in front of Parliament in 1972, and it was the world's longest running protest site when I was able to join it briefly in 1999. The apology from the nation's leaders finally came in 2007, 10 years after even a federal commission had called for them to make one. Let's be a little quicker than those two governments were in recognizing redlining as bad effects and saying, we're sorry. Just one other little thing I wanted to mention. I wanted to thank the mayor for his gracious statement upon Mr. Azevedo leaving the council. It was, they hadn't always agreed on everything, but it was a wonderful example of being gracious for someone who was leaving us. Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker is Anthony Tejada.
Good evening, council members, mayor, and city manager. My name is Anthony Tejada. I'm the current chair for the Planning Commission Board of Zoning Adjustments. I've been with the commission for about 6+ years now. Also serve on the Washington Manor Homeowners Association, the board there. I've been a member for 3 years. Throughout that entire time, I've had plenty of interaction with Fred Simon. So I can speak to Fred's character, his nature, him being an upstanding citizen, and ultimately providing a betterment of service for the community at large. I've never had any sort of instances where there's been a direct or indirect sort of sexism or bias in that regard towards gender that I've witnessed. Moreover, some of the speakers previously had mentioned this, but I mean, we can go to the recent San Leandro Times and articles and facts that have been cited there. Melissa Wong, from the letters to the editor from a few weeks back, time-stamped a session on 120, the 120 City Council meeting, 227:30 through 231:30. You can read up there, you can watch that and go through the inconsistencies, the flaws with the report that are noted. Really just seeing this as a sum of $134,000 that went towards a report where the end result really is not factual. There are inconsistencies again that were left as a finished product. So are we any better? Are we any better served than where we could have been if this was handled in-house, internal? I really think structured collaborative partnering here as a council can go a long way. If we discuss the matter, find commonalities between what can happen and what could be done to improve the situation, that's the only way we're going to get better. And that's the only way our image is going to improve. Not by hiring outside resources that we pay lump sum money to and get a finished product that we received.
Thank you, sir. Your time has elapsed. Mayor, that concludes all of our in-room comment cards.
So we'll close public comment. At this point in time, we will proceed with our next agenda item, which is our typically public hearings, but we don't have a public hearing today, so it will be our one and only presentation for today. It's a presentation on the current residential development market conditions and feasibility for key residential development projects in San Leandro. And for this item, we've got Economic Development Manager Katie Bowman to kick us off. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here tonight in the item. San Leandro has a substantial pipeline of entitled housing, as you may know, And we've demonstrated over the years through a number of different measures, a commitment to streamlining housing approvals and improving feasibility of housing. And tonight we have Will Solholt of Cosmont Realty, who through the housing work plan has done an analysis of our residential market, and he's going to help shed some light on the current state of the housing market in San Leandro, and why some of these projects have not moved into the construction phase. And with that, I'll hand over to Will, and we'll be available for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, council members, staff. Will Solholt, Cosmont Realty. My background is been with the company for almost 20 years now. I'm a licensed broker in the state of California. Do property sales, acquisitions, leasing, structure a lot of transactions between the public sector, private sector, negotiate a lot of deals where public entities are leasing properties for residential development, et cetera. I was retained and brought on to, as introduced, look at kind of your pipeline of entitled projects in the city, look at the existing housing stock, look at what's going on in the community, and look at why are certain projects stuck, et cetera. For a brief primer, looking at development feasibility, obviously developers elect to do and pursue real estate development to generate profit, right? They don't usually do it for fun. Some do, but for the most part, it's to generate profit. And profit is developed obviously when development value exceeds development costs, typically relies on investors putting in their equity and lenders putting in debt. So you've got to get both those parties satisfied with sufficient returns to see a product come to fruition. Generally speaking, if a product's not projected to generate a substantial enough profit, developers won't do it, or they'll look to do development elsewhere in other markets. With respect to measuring returns, this is how you get to gauge what's going on in your community and how developers look at things. They look at it as a cap rate. A cap rate is a measurement of return on investment. The cap rate is the cash return divided by the value. Basically, if you've got something that you buy for $100 and you get $10 back from that on an annual basis, if you paid $100 in cash, you got $10 cash back, that would be a 10% cap rate, or a 10 cap is how they call it. The next measurement is return on cost. Very similarly, it's actually how much the value is relative to the cost. So if a development is worth $110 million, but it costs $100 million to put into service or to construct, that would yield a 10% return on cost. And you use those two numbers together to evaluate projects. This, you can have fun at your own time, I'm sure, but this looks at different yields, different cap rates, and how they change over time. The cap rate is a return for risk, as well as in the scheme of investment. That top line there is hotels, riskiest investments. They require the highest cap rate returns. The bottom is multifamily. The brown line on the bottom there is multifamily, generally speaking, the most stable, most consistent, and therefore demanding the lowest cap rate or rate of return relative to other real estate investments. The gray bars you've got there are the 10-year T-note, very stable, safe investment conceptually, and the dashed line is CPI. So the point of this chart is these things change as perceived risks and returns weigh and bear out in the market. What happens when cap rate changes, it's a substantial increase or decrease in value. On the left-hand side, you've got the purchasing power at $1,000 a month as a mortgage. Probably pretty familiar with how that purchasing power goes down as interest rates go up. Similarly, as cap rates go up, the value of an asset go down pretty substantially. And I'll dig into that a little bit more in here in just a second. At the highest level, increases in rent generate more cash, increase value through that cap rate formula. Increases in vacancy reduce the cash return, reduce the value. Increases in interest rate, increase borrowing costs, reduce cash return, reduce the value. The simple example here of a cap rate is if a property was worth $1 million and had net income based on net income at a 4 cap, which was not uncommon a few years ago, that would be worth $25 million. The same property in today's market at a 5 cap, let's say, would be worth $20 million. So a $5 million decrease in value, 25% decrease with no change in income conceptually. And so you can have pretty substantial variations in value as the market fluctuates. With respect to your local market, we did look at a lot of markets. Very high level points here based on reviewing the other markets. You've got very limited 4 and 5 star, higher quality product in the market. Really, Central Callan's kind of your flagship property at this point. It's just stabilizing right now. You do have higher rents at Central Callan than you see in some of the other markets, but we'll see what happens and plays out as Central Callan is leased up. Other markets are seeing downward pressures in rent. It's important to note. And so you actually do see reductions in rent as new inventory is brought on, areas like Oakland, East Oakland, things like that. And so you can actually see the rents decrease as more inventory becomes available in the market. And the vacancy rate for that higher 4- and 5-star product in the city is expected to be slightly higher than other markets. We'll see what happens. This is really based on Central Callan. We really want to see that product stabilize in the future. And we look to 4- and 5-star product. That's really new product in the market. If you're coming to develop a new building, you're really looking at what's going on in that 4- and 5-star market, not as concerned about the 1- to 3-star market if you're looking to develop ground up. Generally speaking, multifamily development in the last few years has been constrained by shifts in the capital market. That's that increases in cap rates, reducing value, increases in interest rates. As you saw, the Fed just recently began lowering interest rates again on an overnight lending rate. Over time, that does kind of trickle out and trickle through the economy and reduce cap rates over time. We're starting to see that slowly. There is some general concern in the market about construction cost inflation and uncertainty, but generally speaking, the capital markets are still pretty conservative, pretty hesitant to lend money for new projects. We looked at 3 specific projects in the city that are entitled. The first one, Maximus Project, the second one, Town Hall Square, and then the third one, 1388 Bancroft. Just a quick summary of these. On the left-hand side, you got Maximus, very large project, almost 6 acres. 687 units. Keynote or key metrics, 120 dwelling units an acre. That is similar in density to Town Hall Square. A much smaller project, given a smaller footprint, 180 units total, but again, at that 120 dwelling units per acre. Both projects proposed to be parked with subterranean parking, which is very expensive. With respect to building heights, Maximus at 5 stories, Town Hall Square at 7. Those are generally speaking, it's possible to construct that height with the lowest cost of construction, we'll call it stick or type 3 construction, generally wood construction. And then on the right-hand side, 1388 Bancroft, 3 stories, 42 dwelling units, much lower density, right? 33 dwelling units per acre. That one's surface parked. With respect to feasibility, Maximus, we see that as it's going to require substantial improvements in the market fundamentals to have that make sense, just given the scale, the lack of a proven market in this local area. So we'd expect to require pretty substantial improvements in the market before that would get built. Town Hall Square, we think that's really dependent on Central Callan, the performance of Central Callan next door. If Central Callan leases up successfully, then you might see financing and support from a lender investor community at Town Hall Square. And then 1388 Bancroft, we expect that to be financially feasible as we sit here today. Just that construction type, lower cost of construction. The surface parking costs much less per unit than subterranean parking, so we say that we would expect to be financially feasible in the near term. Overall, we do think the city is an attractive market for future development. But the market for the new product has yet to be fully proven out. And again, I go back to Central Callan. I think that's a bellwether for future development in the city. To the extent that that leases up successfully and that proves to be viable in the market, you might see further investment in the near term. The city does have some opportunity to have an impact on development, on the financial feasibility of development, especially if projects are on the bubble. As we move, as cap rates come down a little bit, there's a lot of power in even small movements in the cap rate, but if a project is on the bubble and you want to see something happen sooner than later, things like inclusionary housing, impact fees, development standards, rent stabilization ordinances, all those types of things come into play in the eyes of the investor and can make a developer and investor team have a go, no-go decision. They might look somewhere else given the opportunity, but you do have these levers that you can pull on. At the end of the day, though, even seemingly small changes in the broad market can have a huge impact on financial feasibility. If you see the whole market swing, cap rates come down from 5 to 4, rents go up, construction costs stabilize, we would expect to see additional investment and movement forward with some of those entitled projects. At the end of the day, developing a new project is a very risky proposition, especially in unproven markets. Not everybody, but many people see developers as the big, bad, greedy profit takers. At the end of the day, it's a very risky line of business, putting $100 million in assets in the ground in many cases, sometimes more, sometimes less. But ultimately, in a very highly leveraged environment, a very risky proposition to take. So they're, in most cases, conservative with their investments. They want to have some certainty as to what's going on in the near term and the future. With that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so we'll start with questions. Actually, let's take public comment first because there's no action that's going to be required by us. So let's take public comment on this item, then we'll come back for questions, dialogue, etc. What public comment do we have on this item?
Mayor, we have not received any comment cards, and there is one hand raised online.
Okay, last chance in person. Seeing none, we close public comment in person and we'll move to public comment online.
Douglas Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Why, thank you. It's a very interesting analysis. It does raise certain questions in my mind. I did hear that little stab at the RSO we just passed, because I think there is a school of thought out there that, you know, strict rent stabilization is not something that financiers are too interested in marrying up to in a municipality. But I'll go back to the top of your first slide, right? The paradigm we're working off here is that, you know, like these these financiers, they're not going to do it unless there's a profit. And okay, that makes sense. You know, we're in a capitalist system that all makes sense. Some stuff does get built. I'd be curious to know kind of what is the leasing success so far at Central Cayenne, and you know, what's the projection there? You know, the problem from the housing advocate standpoint is that those units are very expensive. Even the low market value, below market value units are pretty unaffordable. You have to have a kind of a primo salary to be able to do that. So what I'm wondering is, you know, what if we shifted the paradigm so that the motivation was not necessarily to make a profit, but just to provide as much housing as we can for our community. I think it's very important that we maintain the housing stock that we have, hence the housing protections are very important for potential tenants. But also, you know, has the city ever looked into social housing? Is the city willing to finance, maybe it would not be the blockbuster development, but something smaller that we could afford, could save up for, could get grants for, and the like? Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, that concludes our comments from online.
Okay, so we'll close public comment and come back to council members for discussion, questions. Use your time as you'd like. Beginning with Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. If we could go to, I think, the second to last slide on the findings. Yes, thank you. I know you spoke about it briefly, but the question I have is what, if anything, can we as the city council and the city do to help to incentivize and nudge these developments into action? And from what I heard is that Central Cayenne is the bellwether, and we want it to be fully leased, and that would indicate that this is a market and a community that welcomes large developments, and this would be ultimately I can't think of the word. I'm having a brain fog. They can make money profitable for developers. Is there anything that we have control over, in your opinion, in looking at this? Because it sounds like you're saying we have to wait and see, and there's not much right now. And with the third development, 1388, that I think has to do with the fact that the buyer or the developer is working with, because it's being done through the school district, that's a very different developer than, let's say, the Maximus project.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. I think with respect to, I think it's 1388 Bancroft, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. We looked at that before the school district was a buyer, and so the conclusions would be the same, just based on the cost of construction, the fact that you've got service parking. It's simple and efficient building. In fact, if you look at one of the metrics up here is efficiency, average square foot unit efficiency. Generally speaking, smaller units yield more revenue per square foot. It costs more to build. A studio, as an example, is more expensive on a per square foot basis than a 2-bedroom because you have a kitchen, you've got conceptually the same, if you've got 1 bathroom or 2 bathrooms in the 2-bedroom. But with respect to the building efficiency, that one's at 71%. So that means net to gross. The gross building is, let's say, 1,000 square feet. You've got 710 square feet of leasable space if you're 71% efficient. So you don't have to build the extra square footage. You can rent out more of the square footage that you build. So that's a more efficient construction type. That's with respect to that one property type. With respect to what can you do? Central Callan, at this point, I would crudely say it's a marketing exercise at this point. It's is there something that you can do, talk to the building owners, or something that you could do to help them lease up and stabilize? I don't have insight onto their leasing program or anything like that. All I can see is how long they've been leasing, what it looks like their leasing activity is. These things take time to lease up. Ultimately, it'll be, I would expect, a year or two down the road where if they are able to stabilize at or below, let's say 10% vacancy rate, then other developers will go, okay, there's a proven market that we're able to establish and lease up. They'll look at the rent rates they're able to achieve and say, yes, that does or doesn't make sense for them. Other developers aren't necessarily as worried about the profitability of that project per se, because every development is unique, but they are interested in what is that building able to achieve on a rent per square foot basis? What is it able to achieve on a vacancy rate? Those types of things. With respect to projects that aren't out of the ground yet, the kind of the levers that you have, they're not as powerful necessarily as fundamentals in the market. If suddenly investments or properties were trading at a 3 cap instead of a 5 cap, that would be a fundamental shift in the market, and that same property would have a lot more value given market standards. The things that you do have, though, it would be things like inclusionary housing. You've got an inclusionary housing policy in the city, and I'm not here to opine on right or wrong, just to tell you that when a developer can look at city A or city B or city C and they say, I want to invest in A, B, or C, with a city without an inclusionary housing policy might be more interest in terms of investment. They might support a lower cap rate. These policies, in effect, add risk or cost, and so result in a higher rate of return required. And these things matter from on a pretty minute scale in the scheme of, if you're looking at a developer needing to get a 6.5% return on cost. So if they invest $100 million, they need $6.5 million in profit back. And I'm sorry, do I? No, okay, thank you. Cut me off anytime, please. Some investors might say, I'm only willing to do it at a 6.6 or 6.7. I mean, that's how precise some of this investment measurement is, because it's a leveraged transaction, and so that 6.5% return on a leveraged basis can be much more substantial. So small changes can make big differences. Inclusionary housing policy is an example. Impact fees. What we're seeing some cities do for some product type is say, you don't have to pay your impact fees up front, developer. You can wait until you have a certificate of occupancy. And what that does is that takes a pretty substantial component, anywhere from 1 to many percent of the development cost. It takes it from the front end of a project, which is very expensive money, equity that requires a large rate of return, and puts it at the end of the project, so that developer doesn't need to finance that return for 2 years, doesn't need to finance that cost for 2 years. That's an example. Rent stabilization is an example. Obviously, you've got in the state of California, you've got a policy, and developments that are newer than 15 years, the first 15 years are exempt. From a developer's perspective, that 15 years is potentially a short time frame. You're looking at what happens down the road. In the development world, if I was going to try and lease a piece of property for residential real estate, generally speaking, I would expect a developer to be looking at 60 years at a minimum from a lease perspective. And so that's the kind of time frame potentially that they're looking at. So all those things come into play. It doesn't mean that you can't have it. It just means that developers may require a premium to invest in that market. So.
Great. I have follow-ups, but time is up, so I can loop back around.
Thank you. At this point, we'll go to Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Mike, I have 3 questions. You touched on Central Callan. Where are we at with Central Callan being leased? What's the percentage of occupancy?
Sure. I can tell you what I've seen at least. We use a service provider called CoStar. They do a lot of residential, I'm probably familiar with it. Their math is that it's about 44% vacant or something like that, 41, 44, I can't remember. But that's been static for the last 6 or 8 months. When I go to their website, I would peg it at about 25% vacancy based on the units that they've got listed as available. That said, they could be holding back units. And so the greatest intelligence is the building owner, the building manager. And so I don't have information beyond that. But I don't know if there's anybody else who's got insight into it. But generally speaking, it's a good building. You've got a great retail tenant on the ground floor. People like to live in spaces like that. It's got good access to public transit. It's in a neat area. And so I think it has the opportunity to be very successful. Sometimes buildings like that, the management will be slow to lease up. They're okay with higher vacancy rates potentially to achieve the rent levels that they like to achieve, so they might release units slowly. But ultimately, at a certain point, you've got to lease up the building, generate income. And so we'll see what happens over the next year or two. But that's the information I've got, is somewhere between 25 and 40%.
Thank you for answering that. And my other question is, with regards to, you mentioned building community partnerships with the city and the developer. We have other aspects like NIMBYs, YIMBYs. We have PLA agreements, and with the Central Callan, we had a issue with CEQA and not being fully labor amenable, and then settlement ensued. So what does that partnership look like with the city and developer? And I would also include community.
Sure. A lot there to unpack. Certainly there are, development is not always a friendly game in the scheme of, not everybody wants to have development next to them. I completely understand that on a personal basis. So there is YIMBY, there is NIMBY for sure. Sophisticated, savvy developers will understand their community and try and develop a project that's conscientious of what's going on around them, and in a scale and in a manner that makes sense. With respect to things like PLAs, prevailing wage, and the notion of publicly delivered housing, what I've seen from my personal professional career and experience in dealing with projects that do have prevailing wage, things like that, they are an order of magnitude more expensive to construct typically. Say 25% for a stick build construction. Recently looked at a project they could have built with steel and concrete instead of wood and had the same price point basically, which in my mind that's a better product to be built with steel and concrete and a higher quality product. But from a development perspective, it's just one more hurdle to achieve feasibility. So in a really good market, yeah, it can make sense, it can support it. If you're in a higher rent market, downtown San Francisco, San Diego, places like that, and especially if you're constructing high-rise development, type 1, over 7 stories, 9 stories up, there's less of a premium, less of an impact, and so you can pay prevailing wage labor easier. It's easier to make that financially feasible. But for the type of construction like Bancroft, even Central Callan in a typical market, that would be stick build, you'd have a pretty substantial premium, even with PLA.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And then my last question is, I know you had some good projects on here. I know Maximus is kind of still on hiatus or hold. What about bridge housing on Washington? Was that due to, is that still in fruition, or did they ever get financing?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with it. I know a little bit of it, but yeah.
I think they're pointing at Avalanta.
Oh, yes. So that project is fully entitled, but it is short on financing. So they're looking at public financing options that they would be eligible for. And it's, I think, what we've seen in our market feasibility analyses is that affordable housing projects are also struggling to pencil at this time. based on demand for limited public funds.
So that doesn't mean that it's not happening, it's just on hold.
Yeah, all of these projects are essentially on hold pending financing of some kind, either private, bank financing or public financing if it's an affordable project.
Gotcha. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Councilmember Simon, please.
Thank you for the presentation. Much of what I'm seeing are rental developments, and we have rent stabilization ordinance. We hear people struggling to pay rents, and long-term renting is not the greatest option as you get older. What type of projects do we have for home ownership? Do you have any information you can share about home ownership in San Leandro?
Yeah, not specific to San Leandro, other than anecdotal information about some of the development types I've heard proposed. What the projects I've heard proposed are similar to what we see throughout the state, which is townhome development, for sale townhomes. Those currently and of late, last few years, have yielded the highest residual land values, meaning they can pay the most for the land, and people who are developing townhomes will pay more than any other land use, as an example. Part of that's a function of the cost of constructing a townhome is relatively low, right? It's 2-story, 3-story, wood construction again, so it's pretty simple construction. Because it's for sale product, people will pay a premium relative on a per square foot basis relative to for rent. So when you look at a for rent product, you've got to, generally speaking, you apply that cap rate to it and you convert that rent into a present value dollar. And so when cap rates went up, the value per square foot of rental product relative to for sale product, the for rent product went down in value, the for sale product continued to go up with the market. And so you see for sale product, generally speaking, as a townhome development that's typically 22, 24 dwelling units per acre. The hindrance on, if you ask a developer, the hindrance on doing a condo construction is often attributed to the warranty process, the builder's warranty, the 10-year builder's warranty. You have it on the townhome as well as an issue, but that's what a lot of them cite. Some developers will actually develop a building, rent it out for 10 years, and then sell it. They'll condo map it, construct it in the mindset and the quality that they're going to sell it in the future. So they'll rent it out for 10 years and then sell it. But generally speaking, the for sale segment that we see is either single family home or townhome, unless again you're in the extreme markets like a San Diego, San Francisco, where they are constructing condominiums, high-rise condominiums.
Okay, but for here in San Leandro,
Yeah.
I guess my question is, why don't we have any townhome projects that are on the horizon?
I would expect it's probably an entitlement question at that point.
I can take that, Will. So I think for the townhouse projects, they are more financially feasible than the other product types, but we don't have significant amounts of open land where you could get the scale needed for a project. So we've had the 2 D.R. Horton for sale projects, Poppy Lane and Maple Lane, that both were very successful, and I think there's strong interest in that product type. We've also seen interest in the Kaiser property off the 880 for that style of development, but we don't have any active applications in currently. So I think it's more of a supply of land issue here. We have we're a very built out city. So we do have some key projects and some key opportunity sites that product type could work for. But I think that's the main reason you're not seeing substantial townhome development.
Have we considered looking at our zoning such that we could change some of the commercial, particularly along shopping corridors such as the Marina shopping district, the Marina Square, along that area where I think people would be interested to live? Have we considered that to bring in more home ownership? Because I think that's really important in San Leandro, to give people the opportunity to stay in their homes rather than face the rent situation 20 years down the line.
Yeah, it's a good point. Most of our commercial zones do allow for that type of product with approvals from the Planning Commission. I think it's still a parcel size issue where a lot of the parcels, are not substantial enough, and our shopping centers like Marina Square are still thriving. So, but we're definitely looking at all opportunities to create housing opportunity.
Okay. Another question is, existing commercial developments, such as in the district that I'm in, District 4, the Greenhouse Marketplace, have we looked at reimagining these commercial centers to become mixed use such that we can have shopping and living at the same time from an existing standpoint?
Yeah, I haven't personally looked at that one specifically, but definitely one of the big trends, at least for larger properties, is to convert parking areas, parking fields into residential development. Certainly that's done at a multifamily scale, and in some cases we are seeing townhomes, as an example, being built next to existing shopping malls, and we have a couple major anchor tenants that are going away. With respect to parcel size, generally speaking, at least a few acres is desired to have any kind of critical mass for it to make sense for a developer to come in and do that, because it is often an exercise of entitlement zoning, the NIMBYs, the YIMBYs, dealing with all that. So there's a certain scale that they look for. I will say there is increasing, so that the townhome market is kind of tapering off a little bit. It's kind of losing some of its steam. That said, there is still a lot of momentum. I do see a lot of office park conversion as an example. When office came out of favor post-COVID, go back to this. So we had COVID, people started working from home. You see the yellow line there, that's the cap rate on office. People go, oh, I don't want office. So when cap rates go up relative to other product types, you see that spread increasing over the red line retail, kind of 24, 25. That means people are saying, you have to pay me more to buy an office building. There was a lot of office vacancy. The vacancy is decreasing a little bit, but what we're seeing and actively dealing with are in many municipalities, entitlement applications to convert two-story office buildings, surface park office buildings to townhome development. It's a really common thing. I think we'll continue to see that. On that note, we're seeing some developers come up with new product type that also satisfies some of the affordable housing. And so they'll have like a 3-story townhome with a junior ADU on the first floor. Kind of behind the garage, they'll have an apartment unit that the homeowner can own, rent it out. So it's a good way to actually increase housing supply, both for sale and for rent product. And so there's some new products coming online. There's some opportunity. I think it speaks to what's available from a zoning perspective and a land use perspective and a parcel size perspective. There are opportunities though, especially as you see retail, any place that's got kind of struggling retail, any center that's got struggling retail, once you hit a critical mass of vacancy, then those options really start to come into play for an owner, or people will start making the phone call to the owner.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bolt, please.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I really do like when you come and speak to us. I remember when you came on the Planning Commission, because honestly, it's kind of like taking our medicine, right? Around some things that we choose to put in action. For instance, when we talk about how fast it takes to get through planning, right? All developers want a smooth, quick, easy process. Check the box, I'm done. And then through different bodies, we create these kind of speed bumps to try and level it out and make sure something's not just gliding through with no protections or, infrastructure needs, libraries, parks, like everything's got to be built up with this, so there's more money involved. When we talk about Central Callan, do you feel that if that were to be built and then across the street, the town hall, that and they're successful, that maybe Maximus could get to that point? Do you think that type of funding can come in at that point? Because that's the big one that we'd really want, right?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, so if Central Callan proves out and Town Hall Square gets built, that's a very different paradigm. It gets built, stabilized, and occupied. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're probably looking at 5-6+ years for something like that to happen, would be my guess. And who knows where the market is at that point. Mm-hmm. If we get back to a market where, kind of going into COVID, you see the cap rates from 2010, post-recession, the brown line there kept going down, right? And so that is cap rates going down. That is more and more people willing to pay more and more for a given asset. And so if you're in that type of environment again, those types of things become very feasible. Proving out the market with both Central Callan and Town Hall Square, that's it's a nice depth of units, if you will. I think Maximus has the potential to be a very efficient project given its scale, but it's such a large project that it requires a substantial investment. There's a lot of people putting money on the table. That's an investor profile that's pretty serious about certainty and not taking a ton of risk or minimizing as much risk as possible. I mean, it's real estate development. It's a very risky game, but yeah, something like that comes into play. I don't think it's a forsaken project by any means.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? The smaller the project, the less the risk, right? The bigger the project, the more the risk. Last thing I'll say is we continue to lose the battle when we speak about PLAs and prevailing wage. And I know it's not your intention, sir, but when we say it's premium money, that's just a standard of living that we ask, a standard wage, area standard wage. And it's 100% not you. It's just the developers and the way they've chosen to speak on this issue of an area standard wage is all of a sudden some premium wage that, oh my gosh, if we pay this premium wage, we're tanked. And you know what we should do? We should go pay this low, we should find the low wage out there so that we can really make some money. Because when Callan's done, they did pay area standard wages or premium wage, and it's gonna make money. We know it's gonna make money. So I appreciate you again. It is like taking some medicine, but sometimes I gotta spit the medicine out and talk straight.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm a fan of prevailing wage labor. Don't get me wrong. I just speaking the economics of it. Yeah. Thank you.
Did you want to go again? Thank you, Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the last things that you mentioned was around with Central Callan, it being a marketing exercise, which I thought was really appropriate because that was one of my notes. It's funny we keep talking market in two different ways, but what I'm hearing, and the one first follow-up question is around the comparison to the other jurisdictions, recognizing that it is like with these cap rates and the market, the just economic landscape the way it is, people are just much more hesitant, right? Like affordable housing they're finding it difficult to get funding. Across the board, it's difficult. Are we different than other cities in the area that you're comparing us to, or is this just a outlook of where we're at right now so that we can be realistic about what to expect and how to prepare for when things hopefully change for the better?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. First, say with respect to affordable housing, I put that in entirely a different bucket given the funding mechanism and the cost of construction. That is a whole nother game relative to the market rate development. And in that development, generally speaking, it's funded by tax credits, as you might be familiar with. Generally speaking, it's funded by low-income housing tax credits, and those tax credits support pretty high costs of construction. It's just a complex capital stack. That's it. With respect to where you are and your peers and other areas of the market, I would say that my sense is you've had some areas around you that got a lot of investment in the last 10 years, and have got 1,000 charts you can pull up here in your spare time after hours. But I would say you're probably not the first place that's going to get investment, but you wouldn't be the last. I think you've got a authentic downtown. I think you've got a lot of good stuff going for you, right? You're close to public transit that brings access to a lot of markets. There are a lot of people that don't want to live in a higher density area, and you've got a nice scale, sense of scale for a lot of people in the authentic downtown. Again, I point to Central Callan. I say a marketing exercise because it's built, right? There's nothing about the building that feasibly you can change, right? You can't change the unit configurations at this point. And not to say that it's not the right ratio of unit sizes and unit mix. I'm sure they did their homework, and I'm sure it's very well-run operation. I say market exercise because it's there. Now you got to get the people there, right? And maybe it's awareness, maybe it's other factors, but I think it's a good building, good opportunity, good area. I think you got a lot of things going for you. As the markets improve, you may not be the first place that people invest, but I think that you're a good opportunity for investment. And obviously, people entitled projects that were well thought out and planning for pretty, like Maximus, that's a very serious scale project, you know. And so people put a lot of money into something to see it through, and they didn't do so thinking that it wasn't going to happen. So I would say it's going to happen. You got to give it time, prove it, let the market prove itself out.
Great. And I mean, I want to sit with that positive, I think, message you actually just gave is that, well, I mean, we may not be the first place that people want to invest, but people are willing to and would want to. And I think the other piece of it for us as a community is not just marketing Central Caledon, the fact that it is a great complex in the downtown, and I walk past that almost on a daily basis, and there's a lot of energy and excitement around there. But for the city in general, that it is a really great community to live in. And I love what you talked about with scale and neighborhoods, because we are centrally located. We have 4 out of 8 of our elementary schools are dual language immersion programs. These are the things that families, like young families, want to look for and want to be able to move into a community and be able to have. And that is not something that many communities have. And so I think there's a lot in San Leandro that we have to market better so that people recognize, and even for the developers to say, yes, like, while right now it might not be the best time to invest because of ROI, we should set ourselves up for when it gets better to have these more creative, what do we call them, new product types, consider zoning opportunities, prepare ourselves for when we do get into a better place where there's going to be more money out there. So I appreciate some of the positives that are coming out of this.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. If I can add, continue to be a place that people want to live, right? Services, as you talk about, schools, police, libraries, parks, quality of the roadway, quality of the built environment. And that reminds me, on the comment too, I want to say, it is good to have balance and oversight in my mind. When you build a development, it's a fairly permanent structure, right? And so any concession that's given is going to be there for a long time.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will close this out. Just a couple of clarifications. So when we think of cap rate, we think about the rate of return that investors require for the perceived risk at that time. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Let's go to page 5 of the presentation. Because what we see is that the perceived risk changes through time depending on what's happening out in the world. If you're in the middle of a chaotic recession, the expectations, the risk perceived is high. If you're in the middle of COVID, the risk goes up, etc. So I want to look at people that invested in 2019 or 2020. So they paid a lot for a property that 2 years later wasn't worth nearly as much. Is that generally what that chart shows?
Yes, many investors, absolutely.
So people just investing in real estate isn't just a mindless game where you make lots of money.
Certainly, and I would add, you've got the 10-year T-note on there. Conceptually, that's a risk-free investment, and so it is a choice of an investor, right? Cap rates fluctuate. The spread over that riskless investment is the perceived risk for sure. The 10-year T-note is, can I put my money somewhere else and make almost as much money without taking the risk? So as those alternative investments exist, an investor will say, I'm not willing to pay that 2020 4 cap because I can put it in a T-bill, a T-note for that, right? And so that's why that cap rate goes up as well as that alternative investment.
And we saw that, for instance, in San Francisco with hotels. So people invested in hotels in 2017, 2018, and they literally turned the keys back into the bank and said, all the equity that I poured into this property, I am walking away from. So to be clear, it's possible in this development world, in the real estate world, to lose a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And so that's why we talk about risk, because it's not all upside. So I do want to worry about a little bit about construction costs. At the time of COVID, there was a large spike in the cost of materials. Then those material costs started coming back down. Then there were questions about tariffs driving up costs. What's big picture the state of the world right now? If I look back 5 years ago versus today, are things much higher? Are they have they leveled out to approximately the same? What can you say?
Yeah, substantially higher is how I'd characterize it. Looking at a parking garage as an example a month ago, and the cost per stall was about $70,000. That's something that would have been $40,000  5 years ago. And so it's a general proxy. Every product is unique, but generally speaking, things are very expensive. And people, we all see that on a daily basis, and that's true in the construction materials cost as well, for sure. One more note on you talk about hotels, you talk about people buying in 2020. The commercial market and financing commercial properties is very different from a single-family home or even a 1 to 4 unit property, in that those properties, single-family home, 1 to 4 unit, you can get a loan for 30 years and have a 30-year fixed loan. In the commercial market, the typical loan duration is 5 to 7 years. You might have a long amortization period, but the bank's only going to say, I'm going to lend you the money for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years if you're lucky. And so if you're buying, let's say in 2015, and getting a 5-year loan, and you've got to refinance, or 7-year loan, you've got to refinance in 2022, you could be in tough shape. And that's why people are handing the keys, because they can't get the next loan. So they have to give up their equity.
The last thing that I wanted to dig into a little bit, when the cap rates change, is that sufficient to drive a tax valuation change?
Property tax valuation?
Property tax valuation change.
So State of California, Prop 13, property tax gets reassessed at the time of sale, generally speaking. If there's an owner who passes away, you might get a reassessment then as well. But generally speaking, you're only going to go up 2% per year, regardless of the value of the property itself.
But my question really goes to, suppose that you bought a property in 2020, and the cap rate has gone up, which drives value down. Is that sufficient to go to the assessor's office and say, hey, my $25 million property is only worth $20 million?
Absolutely. Yeah, people can contest their assessment at that point.
And are those, if you know, are those temporary adjustments, or is that your new tax basis?
To my knowledge, that's your new tax basis.
Okay. Okay, that's all I've got. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, for addressing all of our questions.
Thank you, Mayor.
At this point in time, we will move on to our next item. Our next item, we did, by the way, already cover 10A, which was the swearing in. I'm looking to see if Mr. Victor came. No, we will swear him in at another time. So for item 10B, we've got an item with respect to what sort of direction we give staff in its work with a consultant to conduct a poll regarding potential revenue measures. This is item 10B, and we've got Deputy City Manager Dustin Clausen. Deputy City Managers Dustin Clausen and Eric Engelbart here to present this item, although we only have Eric standing there in front right now.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and members of the public joining us in person or online. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. As announced just a moment ago, we'll be discussing our next steps in potential revenue measures. Just to get us grounded in how we got here tonight in this conversation before us, as you recall, about a year ago, last February, during the council annual planning retreat, the council directed staff to explore the possibility of revenue measures that could potentially appear on the upcoming November 26th ballot. And then fast forward to last June, as part of the budget adoption process, at that time, staff did propose a general fund allocation of $500,000 to further explore the viability of such tax measures that could appear in the November 26th ballot. At the time, council did not include that funding request in the adopted budget, though council did direct staff to return again once year-end fund balance estimates were available. Those estimates were subsequently provided to City Council. And fast forward to December of 2025, council did consider the survey work. At that particular meeting, the motion to proceed did not pass, though the item was reconsidered by the City Council at the very next subsequent meeting of December 15th, at which time the council directed us to move forward with this process. And more specifically, to proceed with community outreach and a feasibility survey, also referred to as a poll. Just to take a little bit of an overview of what that polling entails, you can see the methodology up on the screen before you. Typically, this is going to be about a 20 to 25-minute internet or telephone interview, and the pollster is seeking to capture feedback from 600 total registered voters who are likely to vote in the November 2026 election. A top-line report with aggregated findings, it will then be developed. And then it is important to note that within that 20 to 25-minute total time frame, we really only have, the pollster only has about time for 2 potential measures to be scientifically surveyed. Right here you can kind of see as we all know here living in California, there's lots of different taxes that exist that people pay in different communities. Among all those wide array of taxes that exist, there's 5 here that we want to drill down a bit further on as a potential menu of options for that we could consider for polling. And of course, keeping in mind that there's really only 2 of these that there's really sufficient time to explore in great detail. And we'll go through them 1 through 5 in a few moments. So starting at the top with the business license tax. Many of us are familiar with this. If you go into a local business here in the community, you often see that business license hanging on the wall. Our current tax is calculated using a flat rate based on the business type and the number of employees. And under our current business license tax structure, this past fiscal year that just closed on June 30th, we received about $6.9 million of general fund revenue. So that is an important source of ongoing revenue to our city. Also worth noting, most agencies and public entities here in Alameda County and across the Bay Area have business license taxes. Also worth noting that if we were to move forward with the polling of this particular measure, which we'll soon hear about more in terms of our staff recommendation, there's different ways in which that tax modification or modernization could be structured. Giving an example here, taking an assumption, and because there's so many wide ranges of different ways it could be structured, but just as an example, using a rate of about $1.25 per $1,000 of gross receipts that a business takes in a given year, we believe that would generate approximately $3.8 to $4.3 million in additional annual revenue beyond that 6.9 that we're already receiving. I think it's worth noting too, this is also assuming that a consolidation of the business types that are currently laid out in our business license tax schedule, and also including a reduction in the tax for local small business as well, to kind of offset or mitigate some of the impacts to the business community, particularly for those small business owners. And it's also worth noting too, this structure, it generally mirrors what I would consider an ongoing trend we're seeing in a lot of agencies. Just using an example of Union City, just down the road from us, they successfully moved forward with a tax structured similar to this back in the November 2024 election. And the other benefit of this type of tax is that it's a simple majority of voter approval threshold requirement, which we'll soon see in some other taxes have a much higher threshold requirement. I think it's also worth noting, though, that just the inherently volatile nature of these taxes, they do tend to align with the overall business cycle and the broader macroeconomy. So that's just a variable to be mindful of. And also just this last bullet point, and you'll hear information on all these taxes, that we were not able to identify any past polling regarding such a change in recent history. Next tax we'll be talking about is the parcel tax. Many of us are familiar with this. The city does not currently have any such specific parcel taxes that are in effect right now, although, for example, there are some other special districts, like the school district, that does have parcel taxes that appear on local San Leandro voter rolls, or, tax bills each year. Some of our analysis of the parcel tax option, we were making some assumptions, as we always have to do with any analysis, but that there are various structures available. Typically, one would see in the cities that have these in effect, there's either like a flat rate per parcel or a flat rate per square footed parcel area, and there can also be further granularity between like residential or commercial properties. And then you can see, it's just kind of back of a napkin estimate we have there, you could potentially generate between $5 to $7 million annually off of a given tax. It would also be worth noting that the challenge with parcel taxes, though, and this is by virtue of Proposition 13 from 1978, is that it requires a 2/3 supermajority yes vote for approval. And for context, that is a very difficult threshold to surpass in general. Also, it's worth noting back in 2024, as part of our polling work, a parcel tax did poll at an approval rate of 57.9% by informed, likely November 2024 voters. So while that's well in excess of a simple majority, it still does not, exceed that 66.7% threshold. Also worth discussing is that utility tax modification. Most of us are familiar with this. Anyone who's gotten a cell phone bill, a water bill, a cable bill, you always notice there's those line items at the bottom to describe what makes up the totality of that monthly bill, and you'll often see those line items from various government agencies. So we already have such a tax in effect here in San Leandro. It's the rate of the tax typically ranges between 5.5% to 6% approximately. And currently, just this last fiscal year, again, that ended this past June 30th, we received a little over $14 million in revenue from that tax. Again, showing this is a very not insignificant source of important general fund money we're already receiving. As part of our analysis of a potential modification of this, we look at a 3.4% increase, which could generate approximately $6 to $7 million annually. The trade-off of that, though, is it would be important to note if we were to move forward with such a 3.4% increase, it could create a notably higher rate than most other cities have in the area. The opposite of that, though, of course, is one of the other benefits of this tax is that it's a simple majority, 50% plus one approval threshold. And for context, back in 2024, we did test this as part of the polling work that took place then, and we noted it was about a little over 46% support, which from just in the perspective of the pollster, that is typically considered not viable at that level, knowing that typically with many of these polls, there's often a commonly seen or observed a drop off in the percentage of support when we actually get to voting day. And you can imagine that when people, in the abstract or on the phone with a pollster many, many months before an election are maybe interested or signify they're supportive of it in concept, but then on the actual election day when they're pulling the lever, they may revisit that prior feedback they gave, and that's why you typically see a bit of a drop-off in those percentages between the poll and election day. This next item, district sales tax. Most of us should be familiar with this. Anyone who's done any shopping here in San Leandro or in many other cities in Alameda County is familiar with that 10.75% that you pay at the register. It is hypothetically possible for the city to seek a further increase to that existing sales tax rate, but it's important to note that there is what's generally known as a statewide cap, or people informally refer to it as a statewide cap, which of these local, basically they call it the district tax limit, which is capped at 2% of the 10.75. And so essentially what that means is we're already at the cap right now. And so if the city were to want to move forward with a further sales tax increase, we would actually have to get authorization from the state legislature of California. So that would mean you'd have to find a member of our delegation to carry a bill for us, get it through both houses of the legislature, and signed into law by the governor. And that's a long way away. So wrapping up here, I know we're running short on time. Vacancy tax, this is kind of the last one we're going to cover here. Thus far, Oakland is the only city in the United States that staff could identify with such a tax, like fully implemented without significant risk. The one area with exception to that I would explain is San Francisco voters authorized such a tax a few years back, but it's presently in suspense due to court action.
And then similarly, Berkeley has a tax that was passed by voters, which is but essentially structured and mirrored the same way as the San Francisco tax, and so that one is perceived as very vulnerable as well. In either case, in using the Oakland model, the administration of that tax is quite complex. It requires an appeal process. For context, the City of Oakland actually has 3.5 full-time dedicated, or FTE, full-time dedicated positions working on this, like all day, every day. That is their sole job. That being said, the costs of that program are fully offset by the revenues derived from it. That's also a simple 50% plus one approval if it's a general fund structure. And then back in 2020, we did do what we classify as some informal polling associated with this. As I mentioned earlier, we really only have time to do 2 primary full scientific surveys of measures, but that we could do an additional third, kind of an informal poll question at the very end, and we could do that again. Just our update on our timeline. You can see it there. The column on the left here was the timeline we presented back in December, and you can see, generally speaking, we're on track with that. We've made a few updates since that time based on current information. Happy to drill down that further as part of the Q&A. Just to wrap things up here, our recommendation, kind of tying all this together, staff is recommending that that you all direct us to proceed forward with testing through a scientific survey, the business license tax modernization, as well as the parcel tax option, with the kind of what I would classify as this additional, more informal question related to the viability of the vacancy tax. And with that, that concludes our presentation, and staff are here and happy to answer questions or hear your feedback.
Okay, so we'll begin with Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the business license tax. When was the last time that was updated? Or when did we last update the business license tax?
It's been quite some time. I don't have that year in front of me, but I can certainly get it.
10 years,
Yeah,
5, 20?
longer than that.
Longer than 15 years?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the cost to put this on the ballot?
City Clerk, you don't happen to recall any estimates on the cost of adding a measure to the ballot, do you, from some prior elections?
Yes, thank you. Acting City Clerk Sarah Bunting here. The costs to add a measure to an election are not significant because most of the costs are on a per voter basis. So it's a few $1,000s additional when you're adding it to an existing election. By a few $1,000s, maybe tens of thousands of dollars, but it's budgeted for.
Thank you. That's my only question for now. The rest are comments.
So thank you. So go to Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eric, for the presentation. A few questions. Earlier I had asked. Okay, I'll start with what I think the more information we get, the better, the more informed we can be. So I appreciate that, and I'm a big fan of surveys. So I understand why we're doing this. I was concerned because polling still does cost money, and I forget how much it was that we had we're spending on this one. I think it was like in the 70,000, maybe 73,000 is the number I remember in my head. So while it may not cost as much to put on the ballot, what would be additional costs? Because we have an allocation of a potential 500,000 to further explore viability. What are some of the other costs that we would have to incur if we were to actually go forward with any sort of measure?
Sure. So certainly, just to provide some context, if the council tonight were to direct us to continue proceeding forward, so we already have, for context, we already have sufficient funds budgeted to conduct the polling work. So that's already been taken care of, as well as some strategic consulting support. But there's other areas that would be proceeding in the future. If we proceeded as we have done in past revenue measure cycles in prior years and in recent years over the last decade or so, typically, and it's typically a best practice as well to do a fair amount of public outreach, of course, and community listening. And some of the costs associated with that can be related to the production of like mailers. Most of us have seen as we get near election season, you get those mailers in the mail with information, nonpartisan, just informational items explaining what would be appearing on the ballot and explaining that to voters. Oftentimes we'll also manage some kind of an online poll, et cetera, and things like that. So those are the primary costs associated, or primary things that have additional costs.
Thank you, Eric. And I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves, because this is really just about what to survey on that we've already said that we wanted to be able to send out to the community. I do remember there being a lot of pushback from the community the last time we had sent out mailers, because we realized I think stamps are very, very expensive now. The other question I wanted to ask about, I know we've talked about it, and I just wanted to be able to share with the public as well. I had previously asked for an exploration into any other possible taxes that we could potentially ask about, basically in an effort to try to find money anywhere, somewhere. And I had mentioned possibly looking into taxes on what's can be called some taxes, alcohol, cannabis, soda, that type of thing. Can you just share briefly what you were able to find on that?
Sure. Thank you for this question. Just at a high level, some of the challenges I think that we identified with such a potential tax included running down the list of those kind of use types that you just identified a moment ago. Taking, for example, a tax on gun shops or ammunition sales. Per feedback we received from the police department, we're not aware of any gun shops in San Leandro selling firearms, so there'd be no revenue generated from that. The only ammunition sales we're aware of is at the gun range over on Davis Street, which is owned by the Optimist Club, which is a philanthropic organization. Our understanding, as well as the ammunition sold on site, is for on-the-range use only. So it's not like someone can walk in from the street and buy ammunition and walk away. It's really just for use on the range. As far as cannabis goes, we already have a cannabis tax that's in effect that was passed by voters back in 2016, and we're generating about $1 million a year off that cannabis tax revenue already. In addition to that, as far as tobacco goes, tobacco use more broadly is already declining statewide. Additionally, there's already quite a significant amount of tax on tobacco products in general in California. My understanding is that a pack of cigarettes these days is $15, $16 in some cases. And we're also not aware of any other cities here in the region that have a tax, or what we refer to as a sin tax, structured such as what was proposed. And so kind of taking the totality of that, I think that's basically the preliminary feedback we were derived from our analysis.
Thank you.
We will proceed with Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez, and thank you, Eric, for this presentation. In the recommendation, I didn't see a UUT tax, so why not a UUT tax when as polling was just below, but why not have that as a recommendation to?
Sure, Councilmember. Happy to address that. I think the challenge with all of this and analyzing these various taxes is there's that constraint of really only having two that we can test, and so you kind of have to write up the pro cons list of any of them and look at them and the potential revenue that can be derived, et cetera. And I'll share the rational basis for why staff is recommending these particular two taxes, 1 and 2, and particularly the parcel taxes that we have heard from members of the council in recent memory and for some number of years now about interest in a potential parcel tax. I think just psychologically there is also some just general awareness that members of the public are familiar with parcel taxes. Many of them are already paying them for, say, the school district or other public agencies, and we also have a lot of polling data over the years related to that. And so that's really what informed why that informed that recommendation. And ultimately, knowing the council has the prerogative to direct us.
Gotcha. And let's say, I would suggest a UUT tax, and we conduct a study, comes back fairly well. Would we go out for? I mean, would it be advised to go out for two, a parcel tax and a UUT tax? Did they both poll well on the same election?
By and large, I would say that is not a recommendation of best practice. There's this, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, potentially poison the well, for lack of a better term, and typically focus the resources on one particular tax type. So.
Gotcha. And what about let's say like a sugar tax on soda?
So that is an interesting area. There is some complexity to that. So for background on this, you may recall there's already a few cities in the Bay Area that have such taxes in effect. I believe it's Albany, Berkeley, and San Francisco. Don't quote me on that precisely. But then following the adoption of those taxes in those cities, there was a lot of pushback, I would say, from the grocery industry and their representatives and advocates in Sacramento. And ultimately, there was a state law that was passed by the state legislature and signed into law. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it basically prohibits the adoption of any additional grocery taxes, which includes soda in California. And so that really put a freeze on it. Now, fast forward to today, there has been some litigation related to that, and in particular vis-a-vis the applicability of that state law to charter cities. But I would suggest at this point, it's it's open to challenge for sure. And also in terms of the actual revenue that could be generated, it's not something that would really, given our broader fiscal challenges that we have here in the city, it's not something we'd recommend looking at.
Gotcha. Thank you, Eric.
Councilmember Simon, please.
Thanks, Eric, for the presentation. Considering we are in a deficit of $300 million range at our city, which tax could bring in that kind of revenue?
Which tax could bring in like $300 million of it?
That's what we need, right?
That is certainly true. My short answer is none of the ones that we've evaluated would achieve that sum of money. In a realistic time frame. I mean, almost in some ways you hear that expression, like eating the elephant one bite at a time. And so that comes to my mind when thinking about that, given the sheer size of that need when you include all of our capital needs, et cetera, to identify a tax that could achieve that kind of revenue. I don't know, the amount of each ratepayer or taxpayer would have to pay to actually generate that much, cash flow. I don't know that would ever be viable in terms of one particular tax in one election cycle, if that makes sense.
Okay, how much money will this bring in?
Well, it really varies depending on the tax type and the structure. Now, use an example. Do you want me to highlight
Like say
one of them?
the parcel tax, for example.
So here, let's go back to that. So the parcel tax, we've kind of, and again, these are very high-level estimates, but we think there could potentially be $5 to $7 million annually that could be derived from that. And also another question with parcel taxes is whether or not to include a sunset date on them. In some cases, polling has demonstrated in the past that when there's a sunset date, like this parcel tax will only be in effect for X number of years, and then will go away unless reauthorized by voters. Sometimes that will increase the likelihood of its passage, as opposed to something that's an evergreen tax in perpetuity.
So, yeah, I'm trying to compare.
Just if you could hold on a second, we're going to let the Assistant City Manager weigh in with a little bit more color, and then we'll come back to your next question.
Thank you, Mayor, through the chair to Councilmember Simon. The budget deficit or budget need, if you will, is actually around $15 million over 3 years. I think what you are referring to is the infrastructure need of the city, which is well in the range of $300 million. And that would require some sort of, to be very blunt, no one revenue measure can chip away at that in the full entirety all at once. There would need to be some sort of a targeted plan as to what types of infrastructure projects to address and a combination of revenue and bonds to be able to achieve that particular plan.
Is the city making, do we have any plans? Are we analyzing that? How to chip away at that with a combination of bonds and revenue measures?
So that's a very good question, Councilmember Simon. I would say that this is the perfect example of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. We would need some clarity from council on what exactly the priority is when it comes to what revenue measure, what revenues a measure could generate, and whether that would go toward the infrastructure need, and if so, what parts of the entire infrastructure plan, or if that goes toward other services that you generally would find in our operational budget.
And I wanted to chime in here as well. Just anecdotally, those types of taxes have not been successful for agencies like ours. They've seen more success with school districts, sometimes counties, but cities by and large have not been successful in some of those larger parcel taxes or GO bonds, just for conversation's sake.
And my last question for now is the vacancy tax. I think you wanted to explore in your recommendation, viability of it, but it sounded like from Oakland or other places, the expense matches the income, so there's no net gain on it. So if that's the case, why would we try it?
Actually, let me clarify that. And in hindsight, I could have been more clear on that explanation. So Oakland, I think, is probably the optimal, or really our only example right now, I think, that we're guided from. And we did meet with staff from the City of Oakland to get more clarity on their structure. And it is actually generating a net positive revenue for them, to be clear. So they have that 3.5 FTE staff to administer the program, but our understanding is that like $5 million a year, I think they're currently generating from it.
I think that's correct.
Yeah. And theirs is structured with a flat, I think it's $3,000 or a $6,000 rate.
I think there are two rates. It's either 3 or 6, and it kind of depends on the type of the parcel.
Okay.
And so,
Thank you.
so there is a net positive revenue possibility from that, but it's very, because this is such an emerging, I guess, tax type. It's challenging to generate revenue estimates for us locally, but it certainly would be on the lower end of all the taxes we discussed tonight.
Okay, seeing no other questions, let me jump into a couple of my own. Likely voter. I don't know if we happen to have a good definition of what a likely voter is and what we consider, given that this will be a gubernatorial year, but not a presidential year. How do we think about that, if we know?
Yeah, our pollster, Brian Godby, is online.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the question. The way we do that is we look at the corresponding election type in the past to determine what the percentage turnout is. And that's not just to go back to 2022, which was the last gubernatorial election, because there was an incumbent, of course, in that election, so turnout was a little bit lower. But we look at the 2018 election, which was the last time we had an open seat for governor, and that gives us a baseline to try to figure out what algorithm we're going to use or what model we're going to use to achieve that specific percentage. So we would look at the number of elections that get us that same percentage. We did that in the November 2024 election for the survey we conducted in the summer of 24 also, but that was for the presidential election. So that's the way we do that. And it's probably in the range of 30,000 voters, but we'll have to do some more analysis to be specific.
And so do we, just to kind of drill down a little bit, do we look at people that have voted in 60% of 60% of the last 10 elections, like 3 out of 5 voters, or?
It's probably more like 2. It's either 2 of 8, which is the model that we use most frequently, or 3 of 8, depending on what the percentage actually was back in 2018. And what we also try to look at and say, is there going to be a greater turnout? And something like Prop 50 from last November sort of surprised a lot of people that didn't think there would be that much turnout for a off-year election. So we need to also sort of look at what kind of intensity, it's a little more intangible, that the election and interest in national affairs might drive turnout up.
On the
But
vacant,
that's something we'll look at in this process.
That's perfect. On the vacant property tax, did I hear correctly, am I remembering correctly, that this is something that San Francisco and Berkeley have tried?
Correct. So
and that's the one, San Francisco is in suspense because of litigation.
Correct.
What is it about Oakland that has kept it from litigation, if you can distinguish between the two?
Sure. My understanding, based on my cursory review of available information online, is that the Oakland tax, the challenge, the successful challenge that's put the San Francisco tax in suspense, it was primarily, well, there's a number of challenges, but one of them is through the Ellis Act, which is this existing state legislation that essentially prohibits from local municipalities from mandating rentals. Property owners, like dictating rental, property owner must, thou shalt, rent this out. And the San Francisco measure, as well as the Berkeley measure, exclusively apply to residential property. Both the San Francisco measure as well as the Berkeley measure also, I understand, have like a, it's not just like a simple flat rate. There's essentially, my understanding is that there's a lot of complexity to it, and I think in Berkeley measure, it's like each successive year that it stays vacant, there can be an inflator to the tax. Versus Oakland is a simpler structure. Theirs, as I understand, is just a flat rate of either $3,000 or $6,000 a year, and it applies not only to residential property, it applies to commercial property, it applies to lots of different properties. Technically, it actually could apply, it really applies to any vacant property, not just residential. And so, generally speaking, again, I'm not an attorney, but generally speaking, the Oakland tax is considered safer, for lack of a better term, versus the San Francisco is clearly at risk, as the court has already, disallowed its continued implementation. And then, my understanding from what I've read is that the Berkeley measure, because it's structured in very much the same way as the San Francisco, is presumably going to be open to more challenge and uncertainty of its long-term viability.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll move to public comment on this item.
Mayor, we have not received any comment cards on this item, but we do have 2 hands raised online.
Okay, so we'll close public comment in person, and we will open public comment online.
The first speaker online is Douglas Spalding.
Thank you. Douglas Spalding is San Leandro District 1. I'd just like to self-identify as a likely voter. I was just polled not a few weeks ago about matters in San Leandro. And it was the one that asked if I wanted to recall the mayor and did I want to recall my council person, which I said no and no. I misunderstood. I took it as the hand of John Sullivan following up on his threat after the first reading of the RSO that he was, going to get people to vote accordingly. I subsequently found out it was a poll that was commissioned by the citizens' effort to pass a parcel tax. So I imagine there may be some confusion among the electorate about, who's doing what. And I would want to make sure, I'm sure you're thinking carefully about this, that is acknowledged, that there's another effort and that this is the city's effort. And I support the city's effort. We need more money. There's just no two ways about that. I understand, do one tax at a time. I hope we pass it, and then I hope we go for the next one. I also am a firm believer we need to, cut our spending. That's why I ask, what the replacement calendar on the police cars, is it really like every year or not? I think we have to ask those hard questions all of the time. We're spending too much money. But I guess, you mentioned the thing about polling to see if people are in favor of sunsetting it. Does that help drive up the number? I would ask about senior exemptions. I'm sure that's on your list. But are there some other kinds of questions we can ask to get at general questions of whether people are in favor of taxes, generally willing to do it or not? I like the idea of the business tax. I think it's progressive. Sounds like it's a break for small business
Thank you,
owners.
sir. Your time has elapsed. Our next online speaker is Jeff Kropp.
Hello, this is Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I don't think that polling is necessary. I think that the city's need sort of supersedes the need for polling, that you need to make some tax measures and you just have to decide which ones. I would suggest that the 24 raising a 6% tax to a 9% tax was too large, that all your hope was placed in one place, and people wouldn't vote for it. I would suggest casting your net more broadly with more than 2 tax measures, all of which are of moderate increase that don't stand out from neighboring cities, and put your money and your time and your energy into educating the populace about why those moderate tax increases are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. The next online speaker is San Leandro Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's Emily Grego, President and CEO with the San Leandro Chamber of Commerce. I've been listening to this meeting, and a lot of the topics this evening are pretty much targeted towards business. I mean, even the commercial development review really, kind of reiterated why so many people were, fighting for their businesses and why it's so hard to develop, and all their costs going up and whatnot. And now we've got these taxes that are coming up that are, geared towards business. And I'm wondering if this parcel tax is also going to include commercial properties. There's so much that is targeted towards business, and business at this point is already the #1 contributor to the city's budget from everything that I've understood. And I know way back in 2010, we supported a sales tax because we thought the city, really needed it during that recession time. And we had hoped that there was going to be more marketing for the city, and let's get more people to come to city, and let's build housing and invite more businesses. And we're barely scratching the surface on that. And that's been many, many years. So this is a very interesting conversation this evening. I will certainly like to share all of this with our membership and whatnot. And probably have lots more discussions about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, there are no more raised hands online.
So we'll close public comment and then come back to council members for discussion. And I'm happy to take a motion if you just want to move what staff's recommendation is. I will go with Councilmember Bowen. Sorry, there you go.
I was going to say I'd like to just move the staff recommendation.
Okay. Do I have a second on that? Just looking down. So I've got a second from Councilmember Bolt. Okay, so now we've got a motion and a second. We can go into discussion of this item. I will proceed with Councilmember Simon.
A question on the type of questions we would ask in the polling. My understanding is, I thought we were going to ask what type of appetite the voters had for a tax, like how much money they would consider paying. That goes back to my question about the amount of money we really need. And I understand we want to take small bites at this, but we continue to take small bites, and our infrastructure continues to degrade. Our roads, everything, and the 300 is going to be 500 million. It's going to be 600 million. I mean, it's just going to happen. So I'm really concerned that we are not addressing the problems that we are facing, and we're just passing the buck to the next council to deal with. And we're not even asking. I think we should ask that question, because I thought that's what we were going to do. Do people want to pay? I'm just throwing a number out here, $300 a year. Do they want to pay $200 a year, $400 a year? And then, backing that out, how many hundreds of $1 millions can you get? And telling people the real issues we're facing at our city. I mean, really, our streets are falling apart and we are not keeping up with them. That's my understanding. We're just status quo and degrading. I'm really concerned we're not addressing the needs of our citizens.
Thank you, Councilmember Simon. I will address that a bit, but also would like for our consultant to speak up if I speak out of turn here. What we're planning to do is to go out and test parcel tax at multiple levels and different potential fundaments to whether it's a per square foot or by $1,000 assessed value, but looking at what would be viable for us, because we can go out and ask for 10 million, 100 million, whatever it is, and if voters tell us no, then we know what's viable, what's not, based on their appetite. But we will do it at multiple levels so we can see what people's appetites are for a tax of that type and how much we can get. And certainly, if we were to find something that let's say voters would approve something at one level but not a higher level, then we would see what we could do, how we could use those funds best, use those resources to best address the infrastructure needs of the community.
Okay, and then a follow-up would be, in the previous dialogue, I heard that the school districts are more successful than cities. And can we learn something from the schools so that we can be successful, so we can get those big revenue measures passed to really take care of our city? And if so, what are they? What are those lessons learned?
So thank you, Councilman, for that follow-up question. There is an inherent distinction between the voter thresholds that are applicable to school districts versus those that are applicable to cities. School districts, the current law is that it's 55% majority to pass a parcel tax for school infrastructure, as opposed to a city or municipality like San Leandro. It's a 66.7% threshold, and that is a quite significant difference in terms of the ability to achieve those thresholds at an election.
And one last comment I'll make. Feedback I've heard from the community is a lot of people can afford it. They can afford $20 a month, whatever the number is. But the issue, totally transparent, is trust. Do they trust that the city is going to spend their money efficiently and effectively? And I think we have to get that message out that yes, we will. That yes, we have programs in place to administer, to monitor, to track, to be transparent. I think that's a big barrier, that it's being spoken out in the community, but until we address it head on, I'm really concerned we're not going to make progress.
Okay, seeing no other, no one else having punched in, I'll just offer a couple of comments. I'll support staff recommendations, so thank you for the motion. I do think that there is something to be emphasized in this notion of the residents, the voters, must have confidence in how we use that money. They have to know that we're being efficient with it. They have to know that we are not telling them what we're going to do something and then spend it on something else. I think it's very, very important that we be mindful about executing against what we promise to do. With that, let's have a vote. We've got a motion from Councilmember Bowen with a second from Councilmember Bolt to adopt staff recommendation.
All votes are in, and the motion carries unanimously.
At this point in time, we are going to take a 10-minute break and come back at 9:21. So we stand in recess.
So I got one of my items is to change our meetings to start at 5. Remember we talked about that first? I think that was your idea. So.
Okay, so I'm calling us back to session. The time is 9:21. Let us proceed with our next agendized item, which is 10C, a council discussion regarding how we deal with the District 2 vacancy. So we've got City Attorney Chris Cucatela, who will introduce this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Gonzalez, members of the City Council. I'll be providing a brief report this evening on this item. Next slide, please. So the City Council is aware the Councilmember Azevedo submitted. Oh yeah, of course.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to.
There you go.
Thank you. I know we're. I want to be cognizant of time. And extend this meeting to 10:30.
I'd be happy to do that.
To extend to 10:30.
That's a motion. I'll second it. Let's just vote on that item. So we got a motion, a second. Let's vote. That's to extend our meeting to 10:30.
All votes are in, and the motion carries with 5 yeses and 1 no, with Councilmember Bolt voting no.
Okay, so thank you for that. We will try not to interrupt your presentation. Let's keep the dialogue going. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. So as the council is aware, Councilmember Azevedo submitted a letter to the City Council indicating that he was retiring and vacating his seat on February 10th, 2026. The city charter requires that the City Council fill a vacancy that is created prior to the expiration by appointment within 60 days of the vacancy being created. Next slide, please. We've calculated 60 days as expiring on April 11th of this year. That is the date by which an appointment must occur for a council member from and for District 2. Next slide, please. In terms of process, there are no legal requirements laid out that requires the council follow a specific process in terms of interviews. However, the city has historically conducted an application and interview process in the past. This process must occur publicly and can occur at regular or special city council meetings. Next slide, please. Staff has generated a recommendation for a proposed process for council consideration with the following timeline that is laid out on the screen. This would include making applications available for interested candidates on February 23rd, 25th. Those applications would be due March 9th to 10th. That would be the application window. The week of March 23rd, we would propose that the City Council conduct a special meeting to interview applicants and consider making an appointment. If an appointment is not made the week of March 23rd, staff would recommend returning to attempt to make an appointment at the April 6th regular meeting or call a special meeting at some point between before April 11th to make an appointment. Next slide, please. Following appointment, the City Council is required to hold a special election that would be consolidated with the general municipal election on November 2026. The appointed council member would hold office until that election occurs and someone is elected and that for the remainder of the term, and the person that is elected in November 2026 would hold that seat until the remainder of the vacated term, which expires December 2028. Next slide, please. Should the City Council be unable to make an appointment and the seat remains vacant, that would just result in the council operating with 6 members until an election occurs in November of 2026 for someone to be elected to fulfill the remainder of that term. And I do want to just note that the person elected at that point would be eligible for the remaining 2 years of the unexpired term, and then under the city's charter, could then do 2 full terms after that, assuming that they remain within that district. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm certainly glad to answer any questions.
Okay, so we will take questions on this item before going to public comment and then discussion. Questions, please. Councilmember Bolt.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I want to really understand this because it's saying this, the city council shall, and from all my great years of lawyership, I understand shall and should are 2 different things, and a shall is a mandate. But then if you go down further to if no appointment is made, how, if we're saying we shall do it, how are we giving ourselves the out to not be able to do it?
Yeah, Councilmember Bolt, that's a great question. I think the way you interpret it reasonably is that the city shall make an effort to fill the vacancy, and then there's that additional language that acknowledges that if the city council is unable to reach a consensus, which would be 4 votes, then the city is required to just fill it by special election. But that within that 60-day period, that's the window to consider it. And once you're outside of that, there's no more opportunity.
The light just went on when you said 4 votes. So being that we're a 6 council, it's a super majority to get 1 person in. Where if we can't decide, if 4 of us can't decide on 1 person, there comes the moment when we were unable to reach that point in time. We were unable to reach the shall. But we can't be held liable, correct, if we go down that route?
That's correct.
Like we can't be sued like, oh, you didn't do it, now District 2 has... I'm really struggling with not giving District 2 representation in this, but I also want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
That's correct. There's not legal liability for that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Viveros, or Vice Mayor Viveros Walton.
Thank you. I also had that question, so appreciate you asking that. I just want to drill down in terms of towards the end of the presentation is that if the position is not filled, then the council shall call a special election, which could be consolidated with the November 2026 election. My question is, do we have to have a process to appoint, or can we just make a decision to leave the position vacant and just take it to the November election?
I think the language in the charter saying shall, the earlier language suggests there is some effort required of the council to at least try to come to consensus, versus just making a decision to not make any effort whatsoever.
So we have to put, I just want to be crystal clear. So what you're saying is that we do have to put a process in place to search for, through an appointment process?
Not necessarily a process, but there needs to be some opportunity where the council has a discussion about making appointments. So it doesn't have to be an application process. The council could just, say we want to bring your best candidates to the table. But it doesn't have to follow the process that's been followed in the past. But there does need to be some effort by the council, whatever the council chooses, to at least consider an appointment.
Thank you. What is so we just got a number from a previous item. What is the cost to place the District 2 seat on the election, on the November 2026 election? Is it the same as?
I'll defer,
Let's go to this.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
go
going
to
to
the
be.
acting city manager on this, city clerk on this.
I'll defer to the city clerk.
Would you have that number handy?
The question was,
To have the election in November where we add the District 2 seat, the incremental cost associated with adding that to the election.
thank you for restating the question, Mayor. The way that the election costs are calculated, the bulk of the election cost is on a per voter basis. So adding an additional position or an additional measure doesn't do a whole lot to the total election figure. I don't have that number directly in front of me right now, but I can say that adding an additional position would scale it up a little.
So in terms of magnitude, we're looking at 30,000, 10,000, 50,000.
Apologies, I don't have
Okay.
that number.
We're going to let city manager weigh in on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also don't have the number, but I wanted to just add a point of clarification. Due to the fact that this election year is an at-large election year where the mayor seat is also on the ballot, the same voters would be voting versus if it wasn't, it was only by district and this district wasn't a part of the vote, then you may run into that issue. So it's an incremental change in cost.
Okay. Those are all my questions. I do have some comments to make that I'll save until the end, or until the next portion of our conversation.
Coming to Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. My question is, would we go through the same process that we did for the District 1 election?
And that's something that we are going to decide. We don't legally have to, correct?
There's no legal requirement to follow any particular process. It's up to the council. The council can utilize a process it's utilized in the past or may decide it wants to try something different.
Gotcha. Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Councilmember Bowen, please.
Thank you. I think I understood Councilmember Rivera-Volson's question and the response. The one in terms of voters in the special election in November. One thing that I wanted to clarify is if in June the voters do vote to pass by district elections, meaning only District 2 residents would vote for the candidate. So only that district would see that candidate's name on their ballot, just like District 5 would only see the District 5 candidate, right? So in terms of cost, it wouldn't necessarily increase it even incrementally necessarily because it would be a smaller number than what it would have been in the past elections.
But this is, let's get the acting city clerk on this, because the total costs that we pay as a city, let's hypothesize $500,000, that's based on the total number of San Leandrins that vote. So it would be 30,000 voters, 40,000, whatever that number is. And so maybe in that particular election, it's going to be a much smaller number, District 2. But our fee is not based on District 2, it'll be based on our total count. Is that what you said? Or that's a TBD?
Thank you, Mayor. That is correct. Our costs are charged on a per registered voter rate. And when you are just electing from a district, then we're paying for the costs of the voters in that district. So yes, we're paying the full election cost. As City Manager noted, this is a full at-large election. We're going to be paying the big expensive election costs this cycle because all of our registered voters will be factored into that. For the District 2 portion, and we don't have these numbers yet because this is our first transition into the district elections, but going forward, the council district elections will be theoretically a little less expensive.
Okay, thank you. And then again, the shall language around this, you mentioned that there is no specific process. We necessarily need to follow. We can decide that to follow what we did last time with the District 1 appointment or not. Is it not technical that if we were to have a discussion on whether to appoint, that would be our, and we can't decide whether or not we want to actually go through an appointment process, would that qualify as our effort to fill the vacancy by an appointment? Or do we have to agree to have an appointment process?
City Attorney?
Yeah, I think that just a discussion generally is probably insufficient. I think there needs to at least be some consideration of maybe a pool of candidates or a candidate or a universe of candidates versus just some nebulous discussion that isn't really ever going to materialize into anything.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Simon, please.
On your slide for the process appointment, the staff recommendation, it seems pretty straightforward, similar to what we've done previously, recently. My question is, so we can move as efficiently as possible through this, a basic question, is the application, or where does it define what the criteria is for being a council member? Whether it's experience, whether it's education, where is that defined, and how is that disseminated to the applicants?
I mean, in terms of the legal requirements, it's going to be that someone be from the district, and meet all the other requirements, be an elector, so on and so forth. In terms of who the council can decide who it thinks is otherwise qualified to fill that position. And if the council wants to provide direction on what that application says, or some level of detail in that regard, that's up to the council.
Is there a defined experience and education requirement for a council member?
No.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
The only other question that hasn't been asked yet, I think, deals with duration of time to a special election. Is there a window of time within which a special election must be called? I know we've concluded that we can do it in November, but I'm trying to figure out, I guess, why that's the case. And if you want to just research it, we'll do that, and you can come back later. That's fine, too. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'll just one moment.
Okay, yeah, I don't want you to guess. So at this point in time, let's go to public comment on this item.
Mayor, we have received 2 comment cards on this item, and there are 3 hands raised online.
Okay, let's open a public comment in person.
Okay. Our in-person commenters are Leo Sheridan and Ed Hernandez.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and staff. I'm here tonight to advocate for you to consider an appointment process in District 2. Our district has already endured a 1.5 years of underrepresentation under the cloud of a criminal investigation of the former council member. Another 9 months is not fair to the constituents of District 2. There are a number of concerns in our district that need the attention and the representation of someone that resides within that district. Crime and blight throughout Bayfair and the Transit Hub, shuttered storefronts in the Lucky Shopping Center, And it continues up and down East 14th Street. We deserve better in our area. Our constituents deserve better, and they deserve an advocate to advocate for those needs now, not 9 months from now. It's time to say enough to the distractions and get this council back to business. Please consider an appointment process to allow for District 2 to have a voice, just as the other districts have. Our San Leandro School Board has shown us in recent years that an appointment process is not an unsurmountable hurdle and shows the value of providing representation to their constituents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ed Hernandez.
Good evening, council, staff, city manager, everybody else, for being here this evening. So just my point is to focus on the appointment process now. District 2 has gone without meaningful representation due to the former council member's prolonged legal issues and inability to perform his duties. As we know, February 11th, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit honest services fraud and making false statements, admitting he accepted bribes, including a trip to Vietnam, and funds routed through an LLC in exchange for favoring a housing company. This conduct defrauded the public and broke the trust residents placed in their representative. As a result, District 2 has effectively had no active, accountable voice at the dais for a long period of time. An appointment is the fastest and most responsible way to restore representation and ensure District 2 residents, like me, are no longer disadvantaged. Acting now provides stability, fairness, and continuity while still allowing voters to choose their long-term representative in November. Delaying further would continue the harm already experienced by District 2 and leaves thousands of residents without equitable representation. I decided to speak up that we need to act now. Some people might not like it, but I've been at that dais, so we need to make sure we have leaders that we can count on, trust, and not break that trust. There's a lot to rebuild in our community. We need to do it now, and you might not like it, but it's overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, that concludes the comment cards we've received.
So we close public comment in person, and we open public comment online.
Our first online speaker is Douglas Spalding.
Thank you. I'm going to strike a slightly different tone. I'd like to begin by thanking former council member Brian Azevedo for his years of service. And while recent events are unfortunate for he and his family, in my mind, they don't outweigh the good he's done our city. I'm going to spare you my campaign speech. I'm not a resident of District 2. But I think it's going to be unfortunate to see a campaign that's, running on the Bash Brian platform. I encourage you to think maybe a little outside the box. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see a duel at high noon in front of City Hall between Ed Hernandez and Leo Sheridan. Let's avoid that one. But I'm wondering, couldn't this be part of a special election in June? Is there not time for candidates to file and do everything and get it done? To me, that would be the most democratic way to replace Brian Azevedo. I don't mind the process. In fact, I like the process that brought us Councilwoman Viveros Walton. I'm thrilled that she's my representative. I didn't know of her until Selena recommended her to me, but it's been fantastic. And let's just keep improving. Dylan Bolt was a great add to the city council, and I'm looking for another upgrade policy. So let's really kind of beat the bushes and think creatively about possibilities. Let's scan those commissions and boards we have. Let's encourage people that we think are good candidates. It would be great if we get a good field of candidates, and there can be a competitive application process, and then you council members can make the best possible decision, not only for District 2, but for the rest of the city as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is James Aguilar.
Good evening, council members. My name is James Aguilar. I'm a resident of District 2. I just wanted to hop on and advocate for an appointment process. That's pretty much it. And the reality is that District 2 cannot wait and really shouldn't wait. It's not fair to wait 9 odd months for representation. It's my hope that the process that you choose this evening will be a short and expedient one, but also considerate and transparent. District 2 definitely deserves representation, not an absent vacant seat, even between now and the new election. And so all I ask is transparency and thoughtfulness in this evening's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alvaro Ramos.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the ideas shared by Doug Spalding, especially June 26th election. But I will say, whichever way the council goes on this, I want to say that if you do end up doing things, I don't know how you would do them, but if you end up holding public hearings, that you please let members of District 2 know. So, I mean, for example, I'm just mentioning like communication. I don't think it's enough to do a full wielding campaign of District 2, but communication, for example, by putting up some official city flyers at the local schools in District 2, like San Leandro High School and Jefferson Elementary School, and maybe at the main library or a community center, even though they're like slightly outside of District 2, and also put something on social media so that people are aware and they can engage in the process and comment and share their feedback. I think that would be very helpful to this process. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, there are no more hands raised online.
So we close public comment and come back to council for deliberation. Councilmember Simon, please.
Yeah, I'm interested that we recommend that we appoint the process, we appoint the position. I think that District 2 should have representation and they should have it quickly. I think there are issues that need attention in all of our districts. It needs attention, and I can't see that area having a void of no person until November. So I really believe or December or January. That's way too long. So we have to get someone in there. They deserve it. If I lived there, I would want it. And that's just fair. That's only fair to those residents. So I recommend we proceed with the appointment process and we do it as efficiently and quickly as possible. I do also want to make the comment, and why I asked the question about experience in education was the last go around we did this, we had people with very different backgrounds. And afterwards, and I'm just going to throw it out there because it is public information, the investigation report, criticizes some of us council members based upon our personal or our merit-based decisions on how we decide on people. And I think we cannot go there. We cannot do this again. We just have to respect each other's votes, respect each other's opinions on council, and not attack each other. Well, we just can't do it. We can't afford it. Our city does not deserve to go through this again. So, as the city attorney said, there are no experience or educational requirements. I'd recommend anyone who wants to apply. Anybody. Don't feel intimidated because someone has a master's degree, or I have a master's degree personally, but that doesn't make me any better than anyone else. So anyone apply. I really, really encourage more civic involvement, more people coming to these council meetings, because someone really good may come out of this. So I'd like to make a motion to proceed with the recommendation from that slide to move as quickly as possible.
Okay. So I've got a motion by Councilmember Simon to proceed with an appointment process and with an expedited appointment process. Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I will second that motion with regards to the appointment process. And just like Councilmember Simon had mentioned, there's there's job descriptions for certain jobs. City council is anybody who's willing to serve, who has the time and the capacity, shall serve on this council. And I think, we vet out the candidates. A lot of us kind of look for different backgrounds. Not all of us are going to agree on the same candidate. So I think last time we had a ad hoc committee that vetted out candidates and presented them to the council. So I thought that worked out pretty well. I think there was some candid conversation about who we would support, and I think there were a lot of great candidates that applied, and so I think that we should move expeditiously as possible to, like our public speakers had mentioned, with regards to having representation within that district. I think this is something that we owe to the community, that we need to move forward with this appointment process.
Vice Mayor, please.
Thank you. At the beginning of the year, I made a commitment to my colleagues and to the public that I would make the implicit explicit. And so today we are faced where we are today because we are addressing illegal actions from a former council member, a colleague of ours that did this while we were presenting all of us and all of them. And also the city staff who work in the city of San Leandro. So I want to apologize because no one has apologized yet. I know the mayor has made his video, but I do want to take this time to apologize to the residents of San Leandro, the voters of San Leandro, city staff, city leaders, businesses, and everyone who needs to trust what we do and how we do it. While those actions were not taken by this body, accountability does not stop with that individual. But as elected officials, we are accountable for the systems that we oversee and the trust that is placed in us. Trust is built slowly and lost quickly, but I think we can restore it through consistent and visible action. So what I want to propose is I want to ensure that we take the time to assess candidates, to have people apply. As the only member of this council who was appointed and then had to run in the subsequent general election, and even as a person who has been involved in local government for 17 years, it was a big mountain to climb. And I would want this process to bring someone in who wants to be of service, because ultimately leadership is not tested when things go right, but it is moments like this that our leadership is tested, where we don't necessarily opt for speed, but we look for qualified candidates who want to serve. So I want to take all the time that we can and not move it so quickly so as not to discourage people who may not think of themselves in this role to think of themselves in this role. And this is not about delaying a decision, but it's about strengthening our legitimacy as a body. When a seat opens up unexpectedly, I think that the most democratic response is to let the public weigh in and to let the public vote and to let the public and all the various stakeholders go through a vetting process that we all have gone through as elected members of this council. I think that an appointment process inherently advantages those with existing access and networks and name recognition. And as a former appointed member of this council and then elected, I think I have a unique perspective and perception of how this process goes. I think an open election creates equal footing for all interested candidates, and it allows the community to meet, question, and evaluate candidates on positions that are important to them and on issues that are important to them. I know that we have to go through a process to do a process to appoint. And I don't want to rush this so that we are essentially giving people a week or 2 weeks to think about, put together an application, and just kind of ram it through. I want to be really thoughtful about who serves with us. I do want to address a couple of rebuttals to some of the points made by my colleagues and also some members of the public. I think that our effectiveness is measured by our outcomes and not necessarily only by our head count. And I think that having a smaller council at this particular time will force us to communicate clearly, transparently, and objectively to ensure that we move forward. My time is up, and I will go to the next go around to make sure that all my colleagues have a time to speak.
Thank you, Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo some of the things that Councilmember Espejo-Viveros mentioned. Obviously, we're talking about the appointment process, but it is really important to acknowledge how we got here. And I'm sure we all have friends, families, colleagues that live in District 2. I certainly do, and I would, I want to uplift some of the frustrations that people have felt that while former Councilmember Azevedo did many things to help the community, certainly in the past year and a half, it has been very difficult for some of the residents to feel heard and for their interests to be amplified on the council. And so I recognize how important it is to have that representation. Also want to remind the community and this council that while we have to live in our district and represent our district in that manner, we represent the whole city and work for the whole city and think about all of the residents in this city. Having gone through the last appointment process, it feels like just yesterday, I want to make sure that we do not rush, that it is really intentional, and we have a process in place from the previous appointment. We have a more robust questionnaire than the one that had been previously used prior to the last appointment process. So I would want us to at least at the minimum do those things. We did have a large number of applicants, and we did have to have an ad hoc committee in order to be able to reduce that number for time and efficiency's sake. I don't want to cut corners in that way. When we go through a election process on a regular basis, we knock on doors, we speak at meetings, we share what our qualifications are. We want to give any person who wants to run for this appointment or for the seat an opportunity to do so. The idea of doing a turnaround in a week or 2 weeks for a full application is a very tall order. I think about how many times somebody has to be asked to consider running for office, especially for women and people of color. And that is something that we want to take into consideration so that we are not filling the seat for the sake of just filling the seat, but that we are actually appointing someone to represent the district that the district would also want them to be represented by.
We'll continue with Councilmember Bolt.
Yes, thank you. As the one council member who wasn't a part of the process, I want to commend you all for finding Spade, our vice mayor. because without that process that we went through, we may not have you. So that's a good job by this council and the mayor and the former Pete, who was in my chair, and Brian as well. Was it a 60-day process that time too?
So I've asked the question of the city manager, and she's literally pulling up the slide as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
So we gave the direction, if I remember correctly, at our first January meeting. Yeah, so on January 2nd, we gave the direction saying, okay, let's initiate a process. We were looking to see if we could find the date at which the applications became available. We don't have that, but what we do have is that on the 5th of February, based on the number of applications that we had received, we set up an ad hoc committee to go through the applications that we had received. My vague recollection is that we spent approximately the same amount of time as that which is proposed here, namely about 2 weeks between here's the application, you've got 2 weeks to fill it out, turn it in. And then after that, we did interviews in the subsequent week after the formation of the committee. 2 weeks later, we had a special council meeting for the nomination of the appointment.
Okay, so.
And so we satisfied, I know we were struggling, that we had to do it within 60 days. And I think that, we actually had a couple of go rounds. And so we pretty much reached the very end of when we needed to do it because council members, Reynes's seat became empty on the 1st. And as soon as we counted through the days, we had to have it done by March 2nd, I think it was.
So that's the difference, is there was a greater time in when she resigned to when Brian, and then
She gave us notice. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
But she worked with us. She told us what was going to happen. We negotiated with her effectively. Would you mind please waiting because of the holidays are coming? It's going to be very difficult. We didn't want to find ourselves in a kind of, I'll call it a non-compliance position.
Got it.
So she worked with us.
So that could alleviate the thought that, we're really jamming this one through when we kind of had some time to think about it, and now we're behind, I don't want to say behind the 8 ball, because we're going to go through the same process. I do feel, as a commenter said, and I agree that we do represent the whole city, and yes, we all get calls from all different districts, because we have relationships in all different districts. We all had to run citywide. Everybody up here had to run citywide, so we knocked on all kinds of doors, and so somebody may be more comfortable with that idea. But I still do believe a high percentage of our focus is based on some of the needs that are in our district. So like when I come in and I talk about, like, I bit my tongue not pulling one of the item 5s just to say thank you for putting up the outdoor gym at the marina. Like that's something that our area has spoke about, and can we fix this? How can we benefit in our district from some of these things? So I really do believe the District 2 should have someone in that seat. And I caution us from thinking this is, although it may have been a mountain really high to climb for you, Spade, look at where we're at now, and us finding you should be the evidence we need to continue forward and give District 2 what they need. I do struggle with, I know what you're saying, and then we talked about even how you have to run in such how many elections you literally have to go through in such a short period of time and raise money, and geez, that's a lot. But gosh dang it, look what we got out of it. So I don't want to miss that opportunity and find the next Spade out there.
Okay, just very quickly on my part, I do want to just confirm something. If we consolidated to the June election, the individual who was elected in June would still need to be re-elected in November? Or would that satisfy the need for the next 2 and 4 months or whatever, 2 and 6 months?
No, that would be it.
That would be it. Thank you. Okay. Coming back to to Vice Mayor Viveros Walton. My apologies.
Thank you. I just wanted to address some of the comments that were made during my appointment. When I was first appointed, I had a conversation with everyone on that council, and I told them that I told all of you, and as Councilmember Bolt onboarded onto the council, I also had the same conversation around that I would give you a call if I had a tough conversation to have with you, and that you would not find out from the dais if I had a concern or anything, that I would essentially give you a heads up. And I've kept that promise. I also told everyone on that council that made that appointment that bygones would be bygones, whatever happened in that appointment process. And I've kept that promise as well. So I don't want to relitigate what happened at that appointment process about qualifications or not, because it was tough to sit in that audience and hearing some of the comments coming from here. So I don't want to go through that again. So I think we should just look forward. I would like to explore a June election and see what is the kind of timeline for that. Do we have a scenario planning for a June election?
Please.
I don't know that we've looked at that. I think there are some challenges. My understanding is that we are potentially transitioning to by district voting in June. So if the election happens then, I think you'd have to look at an at-large, and then you create some other issues. There's potentially a cost impact. Consolidating with the general is again, I'll defer to the acting city clerk, but I think consolidating with the general is generally going to be significantly cheaper. So there is that component as well. But I do think you run into some of those challenges just with that transition.
Right. I hadn't thought about this person would have to run an at-large election rather than a district election if they were to do a June versus a November. Okay. I would like to dig into the timeline, because it sounds like that is the process that we have to legally go through. Mayor, if I'm speaking out of turn, I don't know if you have thought of a process for the council, like an ad hoc, or I don't want to speak out of turn. If you have already put some thought into what that process could look like.
So let me just kind of give you some reactions. Historically, when we look at appointments to commissions, and when we look for, let's just start there. We get a disproportionate number of applicants from districts 1 and 5. Period. I mean, that's just the truth. That's factually true. I do not anticipate that we will get 12 or 14, whatever that number was, of applicants for this position. Obviously, I'd be gleeful if we did, but I would anticipate something more on the order of 5 or 6. And so correspondingly, I would not anticipate having an ad hoc committee, just because that would be within the realm of what we could interview and handle in one session.
Okay. A couple of things that I would want to make sure that we include in, I would like to, and just in terms of process, would like in the appointment page to have linked presentations to all of our financial presentations, because whoever gets appointed will come into the role having to make very difficult financial decisions as a body. So I want to, as a person who prepared for an appointment process, I, looked at a bunch of documents, but I had to dig through all of that. But being that this person will have to make budget type decisions, I would like to have like an index of council reports, council presentations, specifically focusing on the financial picture that we're facing. I think that's really important. Also, just in terms of the application process, I thought it was a good exercise for myself to go through that questionnaire and really think through what my positions were. But I would also like to point out that I also noticed that some members of the body did not read all the applications. So asking me questions about things that were on there. And so I just really want to, I know that I put a lot of time, all the applicants put a lot of time in. So if we are going to make a questionnaire like that, where we really want to dig into their positions, that we take the time to read all of it and enter in dialogue with that document. In addition to that, is there any wiggle room in this timeline? I guess it depends on whether we call a special meeting. I'm really concerned about a February 23rd or 25th making an application available. And my time is up, so I don't have any time to yield, so I'll just put my mic back off.
Well, let's give you an extra minute so you can just share your concern. Five. So to clarify, our deadline is final is April 11th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so what I think I heard from you is just a request that council have the commitment to recognize that we may need some special meetings to go through this appointment process, to have plenty of time. Okay. So at this point in time, there was, I think, one, I'll call it actionable ask, because how we would modify or adjust the motion. And that was that in particular during this process that we make accessible the primary financial documents that we are contemplating, I think presumably associated with our council retreat, for example. Was that kind of a good framework? So that those would be in what I'll call a simplified way, i.e. they can find them, but if we could just say as part of wherever the application is, we could also include a link to that. I think that's the request. I'm going to go to the motion maker, which I believe was Councilmember Simon. Are you comfortable with that as a requirement? And then I'll come to city manager to see if it's practical. But would you be fine with that being something that's part of your motion?
Yes, depending on the city manager.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Oops, you should be in there.
Yes, depending on the city manager's response, if she's comfortable that.
Subject to her comfort level. And the seconder, would you feel comfortable with that being made more easily available by being at the application site? Councilmember Aguilar.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a willingness to have it, and given the description by Vice Mayor, is that something that can be associated to where the application would be placed and would slow down our timeline?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before I actually answer the question, just for clarity, because I'm hearing two different things, but I want to understand. I'm hearing Vice Mayor Viveros Walton say all financial information, council reports, and finance committee, but I'm hearing you say things ready for the retreat.
Yeah, I think we've got, just to make very clear, please proceed, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. It doesn't have to be all the reports from finance and all of that, but I do want to ensure that every applicant understands that we will be, as soon as they get appointed by this deadline, we're going to turn around and start making budget decisions. So there has to be some sort of like, maybe even a question added to it, like, so is it the financial presentation from the council retreat that would be the most updated, right?
That is correct. And the retreat is on March 6th, and that information most likely will be ready February 30th, which would be behind the dates of when the applications are out. So someone could apply before this information is available. I will say, just to give you reference what happened last time, I don't have exactly when the applications were made available. But as the mayor said last time, we were well in December when we were preparing for this in January, because we did have the heads up. So we're kind of out of sync on this one. But I did see when we started getting applications. So the first application we received on January 10th, 2024. The last application we received was on January 29th, 2024. So that timeline itself is bigger than this one. Yeah. And again, I don't know when the applications were made available. That's just when we started getting them in.
I would also like to include a link to the city budget that we adopted last year. I mean, any viable candidate should be able to find these documents, but I wanted to make it accessible for anyone who may not be familiar with our website.
Okay. Because I agree they should be able to find it. We're just going to make it easier for them. With that description, do you feel comfortable, City Manager?
Yes, we would put on the application page the city budget and the retreat documentation once it is available to the public.
And one thing that happened with the appointment for District 1 is we actually told people, if I remember correctly, that we would be putting up more information. I don't remember what we put up, but it might have been the questionnaire for that matter. But in the middle of the appointment process, we added something. We shared more information. I just don't remember what it was. So with that in mind, yes, please.
The other thing I would add is, and I thank the Vice Mayor for pointing out the need for extra meetings, is that last time, yes, there was an ad hoc committee meeting, and there was an ad hoc committee that met outside of council meetings, but the council also needed 2 meetings to make a decision. So there was a first meeting when we thought a decision would be made, it wasn't made, so there had to be a second meeting that we did not plan for at the beginning of the process. I would say that this time we need to make sure that there's room for that to be the situation again.
Thank you. Councilmember Bowen. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not in my queue here, so Councilmember Simon, he has been in queue, sorry.
I was in queue, you took me out of queue.
I think you were both in queue.
Just letting you know I was in queue, you took me out. Turn it.
My apologies. You were both in queue. Councilmember Simon, please.
Okay. Well, one thing I'd like to address, and I'm not getting into the legal issues of Brian Azevedo, but I do want to thank Brian for his service, his years of service, for his work that he's given to the community. For example, meals during COVID, so many cleanups events, and he's really personally helped a lot of people. So I just wanted to put that out there. I do also want to point out that we have a lot of actual, I'm going to call it real work to do, like fixing our streets, like attending to our services, our libraries, all these things we have to do. We're going through investigations to filling vacancies to so much administrative time that I really believe our city and our public needs us to focus on going efficiently on this. We will find a qualified candidate, just like we did our vice mayor, and free up our staff, because this is going to take staff time away from getting other work done. So with that, I'd like to call the question.
Is there a second on calling the question? Okay, so we've got a motion and a second on calling the question. Unfortunately, we're not able to discuss, so I cannot discuss this. Please vote.
All votes are in, and the motion carries with 4 yeses. And 2 no votes from Mayor Gonzalez and Councilmember Bowen.
My apologies to you, Councilmember Bowen. At this point in time, let's vote on the motion.
All votes are in. And the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, let's proceed to item number 11. Council request to schedule agenda items. Do we need to read these individually or just the fact that you know them and they have been submitted? Okay, would you like to read them, please? Okay, so Councilmember Simon, can you read yours into the record?
Yes, I have 5 of them. The first one is a resolution acknowledging and apologizing for the city's role in historical redlining practices and their lasting impacts on the community. To include, but not limited to, acknowledges that the practices were morally wrong, violated the principles of equal justice and human dignity, and created lasting harm that continues to affect San Leandro residents today. Formally apologize to the residents, families, and communities of color who were harmed. Examine the ongoing impacts of redlining and historical housing, discrimination through comprehensive study and community engagement, and implement reconciliation measures to take direct action to counteract the harm that was done to the communities of color who were harmed. And I'd like to add that, and this is just a portion of the resolution, and to give you some background, Bernard Ashcraft has taken a very nice draft of this resolution that I think we as council can work on, or I would work with Bernard on finalizing this and bringing this to the planning work session on March the 6th. So that's the first one. The second resolution is to reverse the Simon and Aguilar 2024 censure resolution and issue a formal apology. Per the city's July 18th, 2025 court filing and November 20th, 2025 court ruling with an asterisk, the city's council members were engaging in conduct that is protected by the First Amendment. The asterisk is mileage reimbursement and medical coverage topics were allowed to continue in court, though defensible per city was not part of the 2024 censure. I'd like to add that to the March 6, 2026 council retreat. The third item is that council meetings are only on the first and third Mondays of the month, starting at 5 p.m. with closed session only at the end if needed. Only if additional closed session meetings are needed, it may be held the second Monday of the month. This will save staff time and money, which is less meetings, and end the meetings at a reasonable hour to prevent staff, public, and council burnout. As we see, we regularly go beyond 10 p.m., as if tonight. Fourth one is adding a new pedestrian bridge. And that first and third Monday, that would be added to the council retreat. The fourth one is adding a new pedestrian bridge to cross San Lorenzo Creek near Kramer and Bud Streets and rehabilitate an existing pedestrian bridge across San Lorenzo Creek near Vining Drive and Hebron Court in partnership with Alameda County and other jurisdictions. This improves safety for kids going to school and relieves traffic congestion. And that would be on the planning workshop as well, March 6th. And the last one, and extremely important, as all these are, but this one here will save us a lot of time and just fairness and equity. A comprehensive reform of the city's discipline and investigative policies, including but not limited to prohibiting the accuser from judging the accused, de-escalating issues using restorative justice mediation, council approval prior to use of an outside investigator, double hearsay and witnesses in city lawsuits are prohibited, city manager and city attorney report policy violations and make recommendations to change unjust policies, and that all parties in the investigation must sign an oath of confidentiality and release reports to the public, requires unanimous council approval. That would also be added to the March 6th council retreat. Those are my 5.
Vice Mayor, please.
Thank you. I did not submit it, but am I able to read it into the record? It's not an item that I would like to, it's not a specific item for consideration, but I do want to offer a framing for our retreat to include as one of our pillars fiscal responsibility and equity as we look at our priorities and our 5 pillars. I want to ensure that as we're presented with a very difficult financial picture that we will be seeing and that we know we're going to face, that we are facing, I just want to include that frame or that filter or that screen.
I'm gonna say that really belongs under 12 because it's not an actual request for an item. I don't see any others, and so I'll give you the ones that I have submitted. The first one, and these are consistent, I think, with things that I had submitted last year. For the multifamily units, I'd like to see an ordinance consistent with California law adopted by San Leandro, within San Leandro, for multifamily unit smoking ban currently in place for Alameda County to be adopted here within the city, as the current ordinance only covers unincorporated parts of Alameda County. Number 2, I've requested that, and here I'm not sure the current status of our ordinance, but assuming that it hasn't already happened, by ordinance and consistent with California law, limit the time that boats or other floating objects can be attached to docks within the city of San Leandro to 30 minutes, and to impose a similar time limit for use of boat launches. Limit the time that boats can reside within the waters of San Leandro to 48 hours, except for those located at an operational and licensed marina. Number 3, drones as first responders. By City Council resolution, I'd like to adopt a pilot program under which we test the use of drones as first responders. This should involve at least one vehicle available for launch to be located relatively centrally within the city of San Leandro. Number 4, inclusionary housing modification. I would like to request an ordinance update, a policy change regarding the percentage of affordable housing units required within a multifamily building built in a high priority construction zone, e.g. downtown, and for that to be a reduction. Number 4, increased trained traffic enforcement. I'd like a resolution by the council such that in FY 2027, we double the number of trained traffic enforcement patrol officers. So it's purely a matter of training them so that they're available and we don't run into, we don't have officers to do that. And I know I sent these to you, City Manager. Do you think I am missing one? I think I got them all. I actually see a couple more. To limit the number of housing units owned by corporations. By ordinance and in accordance with California law, limit the number of residential structures within the city of San Leandro owned by a single corporation or its affiliates. The phrase residential structure shall be defined as consisting of condos, single-family residences, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. The limit shall be 3. And then the last one that I have is minimum expenditure on roads. So by City Council resolution, adopt a City Council policy with respect to road repair, maintenance, and replacement, jointly roads, such that The fiscal year 26 general fund budget amount for roads shall serve as the minimum budgeted amount for roads in the future years, adjusted by inflation. Number 2, to the extent that the previous year's minimum budgeted amount is not expended, the unspent amount shall be added to the above, i.e., above and beyond the then current year inflation adjusted MBA. That's why we write this, so that we don't have to know it from just reading it out loud. In addition to this minimum budgeted amount, 50% of any fiscal year in surplus, unrelated to unspent budget for road repair, maintenance, and replacement, shall be added to the minimum budgeted amount in subsequent fiscal years. And number 4, any funding received from grants, gifts, one-time awards, etc., shall be additive to the minimum budgeted amount for roads, i.e., supplantation is not permitted. I think that's all the ones I sent to you. Okay, thank you. So with that, we have reached our adjournment time. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Jesse Jackson, who for many of us was a formidable civil rights advocate for many years, was with Dr. King when Dr. King was shot, and carried that trauma as he continued to advocate relentlessly for decades thereafter. Councilmember Aguilar, did you want to add on to that?
No, I believe we missed item 12.
We've missed item 12 because we've run out of time.
I'd like to make a motion to extend to 11.
To 11.
10:45.
Motion to extend, let's see, until 10:45, please vote. Motion by Aguilar, second by Simon.
All votes are in, and the motion carries with 4 yeses and 2 noes from Mayor Gonzalez and Councilmember Bolt.
Okay, so at this point in time, before adjourning, let's go to item number 12. Or item number 12, yes. Please proceed, Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I think I had a couple of things. I just wanted to address the recent public statement made by our mayor regarding Councilmember Brian Acevedo. I just wanted to be clear that I don't condone my colleague's actions. Public trust is sacred, and when it's broken, there must be accountability. Nobody is above the law. However, I will take issue with the tone and framing of the mayor's statement. As Mayor of San Leandro, you are the spokesperson for this entire council. That role demands leadership, restraint, and fairness, especially in moments like this. What I heard went beyond informing the public. It felt like a personal rebuke delivered after a resignation had already taken place and after the guilty plea already had been entered. Accountability was already in motion. Continuing to publicly underscore condemnation at that point felt unnecessary and punitive. We can stand firmly for ethics without engaging in public shaming. We can defend the integrity of the city without appearing to single out and pile on. Our code of ethics applies to all of us, including how we speak to one another. Leadership is not just about calling out wrongdoing, it's about modeling professionalism and measured judgment, even when emotions are high. I do not condone what occurred, but I also do not condone kicking someone while they are down. Our residents deserve accountability, and they deserve dignity in how we conduct ourselves. I also wanted to take the moment to speak from my heart about former colleague Brian Acevedo. Brian was more than a council member. He was a hands-on community servant. During the pandemic, when so many families were struggling, he was out there rolling up his sleeves, passing out food, organizing and supporting community cleanups, and showing up for food drives across our neighborhoods. He didn't just talk about service, he lived it. He even opened his own home to help provide hot meals to those in need. That kind of commitment comes from a genuine love for community. I am truly grateful to have served alongside him on the council here in San Leandro. His energy, accessibility, and willingness to step in and help will be remembered by many residents whose lives he touched directly. While this chapter closes, I want to acknowledge the positive impact he made and the dedication he showed to public service. That work mattered, it made a difference. I wanted to wish Brian well in his retirement and his future endeavors, and thank him for his service that he gave to the community. I also wanted to announce that I've been appointed to the National League of Cities 2026 Information Technology and Communications Federal Advocacy Committee. This is a one-year term. I will help shape NLC's federal advocacy agenda and policy priorities on key issues, including broadband access, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. And lastly, on February 11th, I attended the 1144th meeting for mosquito abatement. We appointed Robert Beatty to our board to serve a term until 2030. We purchased a 2026 electric Polaris Pro XD, which cost $36,000. And then we supported a resolution 1144-1 in support of mail release suppression technologies. And I have no West Nile virus to report. That's my report. Thank you.
Councilmember Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things I wanted to acknowledge: Lunar New Year. I know you started the meeting with that, but we celebrate, today is actually the beginning of Lunar New Year, and we celebrate with lots of family and friends. And so I want to acknowledge the large number of people in the Bay Area. 1 in 3, I think, residents in Alameda County are ANHPI, and a significant number of them are celebrating this Lunar New Year. And in April, there will be another New Year for other countries in Asia. The other thing that I want to uplift, since I was unable to share my thoughts on a previous election, so I'll just share in general that when there is a time crunch for something like our special, the appointment process, so that we can work backwards from it to give as much opportunity as we can for the community to be able to engage in it and to be able to give the most time for the community, and then we on our end can hold those special meetings at the end. I had a list of the dates that would be possible for us to do so, and I can share that with you all. I would hope that in the future, especially when we're having a discussion, to be intentional about really building out this council and to move forward, that my council colleagues would have the decency to just let me finish my comments. That would be really appreciated so that we can actually move forward.
Vice Mayor, please.
Thank you. I just wanted, I wanted to apologize to both the mayor and to Councilmember Bowen, because the mayor did not get a chance to speak on the council appointment because it is his practice that he speaks last. And I made the mistake of voting yes, thinking it was on the actual motion, and I forgot that we were voting on calling the question. So I want to apologize, Mayor, for being one of the 4 votes that did not allow you to even speak once on the appointment process. So I'm sorry. That's the end of my comment.
Councilmember Simon.
Yes. February, as we know, is Black History Month, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I haven't had much of an opportunity, so I'll take it tonight. First thing I'd like to do is recognize a very momentous meeting that was held at the Big Tent by Bernard Ashcraft, where our very own Janelle Cameron was recognized, as well as Angela Everett and some other strong Black leaders in our community. And I'd like to read something from Janelle's award. Your vision, professionalism, and tireless efforts have strengthened our community, enhanced city services, and fostered collaboration across all departments. And I wholeheartedly support that and congratulate you on your award, Janelle. Also, our chief, Angela Everett, she received an award as well. Her professionalism, integrity, and vision have strengthened the bonds between law enforcement and citizens we serve. Congratulations, Chief Everett. Also, the Stephen Taylor Sanctity of Life Pavilion. Wasn't able to speak there. However, I will share a few thoughts. One thing I'd like to reiterate, and this was in the Stephen Taylor Sanctity of Life resolution, that African Americans are three times as likely as whites to be killed by the police, and that people with mental health issues are 16 times more likely to be killed than other civilians. And that really brings the power to the Stephen Taylor Sanctity of Life Pavilion, so we could recognize the sanctity of life And the concept of that, giving you some history and background, I did a visit to the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., and if anyone hasn't had a chance to visit, you have to visit that museum. It's absolutely incredible. And the artwork that was done, the sculpture at our pavilion here in San Leandro is Smithsonian quality. It's that good here in San Leandro. So thank you, staff and the consultant, for putting that together. Also, the redlining resolution that we saw that I presented tonight that was drafted by Bernard Ashcraft. Again, we really need to recognize what occurred here in San Leandro. And we need to apologize and make corrective steps to reconcile the harm that was done. And with that, I wanted to share a few photos, if I could, because a picture is worth, in this case, 1,000,000 words. And I think it's important for us council to see this, as well as whoever's watching this video now or watch it later. I took this photograph at the Museum of Us in San Diego in Balboa Park. Again, another wonderful museum you have to visit if you haven't seen it. And I came across this exhibit, and it showed the wealth gaps in America between blacks particularly and whites. And next picture, please. And this just goes to explain a little bit more about the difference in the piles of cash. And I counted the different stacks of cash, and it's actually a factor of 10. There's 3.1 stacks of cash for blacks, 33 stacks for whites. And it just shows how the net worth has changed. The middle class Americans, the largest asset is the value of their home. And again, here we go, right back to redlining like we're talking about. If we weren't redlined, blacks would have 10 times as amount of equity. So I just wanted to raise that to your attention. And again, the next slide will show this. Again, just you can see the massive disparity between the different races, and we really have to do something to correct that. And lastly, I would like to say on this topic is we really have to go back to comprehensive reform to our city's discipline policy, as well as our investigative policy. We really have to ensure that we are following our code of ethics and fairness and justice, which is not there at this time, but we can correct it. We can move forward in a positive direction. So with my last few seconds here, I do want to share a meeting that I attended today. I'm the alternate for the East Bay Discharges Authority. This is where Brian Azevedo was, the permanent, that I did attend today. Very good meeting. East Bay Dischargers with these big storms coming out. This highlights some of the projects that we're working on in San Leandro is point of sale program, where we're planning on having people fix their sewer laterals to their homes at time of sale. That reduces the amount of storm flow that goes into our sewer system. So it improves the efficiency of our treatment plant by keeping all the storm water out. That's a big one. There's also something called a Cargill Brine Project. If you've ever driven down in the South Bay along Highway 84, the Dumbarton Bridge, you see all the salt ponds. There's massive amounts of salt buildup and brine buildup down there. 60 years of harvesting salt, and they have to find a way to dispose of it. This is going to help EBDA and help San Leandro to bring revenue to us, to our plant, where they're planning on pumping up that brine, that salt, through an existing Shell pipeline, oil gas pipeline, and discharging it near our San Leandro Marina to our discharge into the middle of the bay. This is a great opportunity for us at EBDA, which we are a part of in San Leandro, to bring in more revenue here to our area. And lastly, I'd like to share that.
Okay, so your time is up. I'd like at least 1 minute. So we've got things that I'd like to uplift. On the 21st, there is a blood drive, and we encourage folks to share the gift of life. That's at the Barbara Lee Center, beginning at 8 a.m. You can sign up with the Red Cross. Secondly, I'd like to thank the Vietnamese American Community Center of the East Bay for their promotion of Lunar New Year, and then highlight the city's celebration of Lunar New Year at the library. Also, on this Saturday, February 21st, we encourage folks to attend. The event runs from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Lastly, I want to just celebrate the work done by the Alameda County Housing Authority. In the city of San Leandro, we don't have our own housing authority. We partner with the county. And one of the most powerful county programs is the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. They invited us as council members to attend this past weekend, 7 days ago, and it was just a powerful event where we were able to see how the kindness of mentors has helped people who are stuck in poverty to set goals, pursue those goals, have someone nudge them along, pick them up when they stumbled, with a number of people then becoming homeowners, getting promotions at work, and just to see the powerful support around housing in our community and the collaboration with the county. I'm grateful for everything that we do in partnership, because it's hard to do things alone. And so thank you to Alameda County for the Housing Authority there. So with that, it is time to adjourn. And again, we are adjourning in memory of Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson. So let's take just a couple of seconds here to reflect on his legacy. So thank you for your indulgence. It is 10:46 and we are adjourned.